You are now entering a dangerous liberty zone where God-given natural rights are held sacred and exercised. This is your warning. Tyranny, fascism, and censorship will not be tolerated. Ideas will be exchanged freely. Rigorous debate and open discourse is encouraged. If you are weak and your beliefs are fragile, you should leave now. Prepare yourself. We are now live on the Dangerous Liberty Podcast.
All right, folks, welcome to another episode of the Dangerous Liberty Podcast. We got a great show for you today. I want to say hi to everybody over in the comments. We're looking forward to another great new year, and I wish you all the best going into it. We're going to cover one of the biggest, controversies, one of the things that's kind of been behind TPUSA, and one of the biggest motivations to say that TPUSA was involved. Well, we're going to get down to the bottom of that, and that is the missing money. But I do want to say hi to some folks over in their comments, all our regular people that we have over there. Number one, our moderators. Moderators, don't put up with any nonsense tonight. If people are here to troll and they're just here to disrupt, you're banned. So, folks, we always encourage disagreement. I'm here to discuss those things with you. We can discuss whatever you'd like. But we're not going to put up with nonsense. If you're not here to contribute to the conversation, then you're gone. We will be doing a normal podcast at the end of this. I will be taking questions and comments with our guest. We will prioritize super chats because if you support us, we're going to take care of you. Also, make sure you like, subscribe, hit the bell icon, all that stuff. If you want to become a member, we do have memberships. You can go down to the link below. You can become a Paramount Tactical member, and we do appreciate that support for sure. Again, I want to say hi to our mods, Jason Sponsor. We got Jeff in there somewhere. We got MJM. We got, I'm sure AM is here somewhere. I'm looking through just a whole bunch of comments. I know Disney up, Boiler Up in here somewhere, but we want to say hi to all of you folks that are here to learn and to just hear the truth. That's what we're going to be about on this channel. That's what we've always been about. I'm going to address some of the other things, the supposed controversy over the last couple of days, and we're going to address that head on. Don't you worry about that. But without further ado, I do want to we are going to bring on Robert Barnes. Robert, welcome to the show, and thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it. You're muted, Robert. I don't know if we did it or you did it. There you go.
Glad to be here.
Thanks, man. Thanks for coming on. You and I have talked about a couple different topics over the last couple of years, at least about a year ago. I don't even remember what it was, but we're going to do a show, and I don't know, life got busy and we lost kind of touch with that. But I'm really excited to have you on. So if you will, just take a moment for people that don't know who you are. Go ahead and introduce yourself, and we'll take it from there.
Sure. So I'm a constitutional lawyer, done all kinds of trials, civil and criminal, all across the country in different parts of the world. So represented people all across the political spectrum. Sometimes people don't like who I've represented. And I said, you don't have to worry about that because my clients generally don't like each other. So everybody from Joe Francis of Girls Gone Wild to Wesley Snipes, the actor, to Ralph Nader, to Alex Jones, to the Covington kids, to Donald Trump, to Robert Kennedy, to people, to the Green Party, the Peace and Freedom Party, the Libertarian Party, the Taxpayers Party, the Constitution Party, sort of all across the spectrum. The only thing my clients have in common is in the cases that they're involved with, they're usually the underdog. They're usually up against the government, the state or the federal government, sometimes up against other powerful institutional interests. I represent Brooke Jackson against Pfizer concerning the COVID vaccine, which was neither safe nor effective like they promised when they stole $2 billion from the American people. So a wide range of cases and controversies over the years. Last decade or so, I've done probably about half of my work has been pro bono, representing people for free or on a contingency, dealing with the COVID vaccine fallout, other civil rights cases, and other individuals that were subject to lawless persecution by the Biden administration in particular. And then a political commentator and a political bettor. So I've been betting on elections since I was knee high to a grasshopper. So that's sort of the broad strokes of my biographical background.
Oh, that's awesome, man. And folks, if you haven't and you're not, make sure you go follow Robert down in the description below. We got his link to X. Robert, are you on any other platforms? YouTube, Instagram?
Oh, sure. The predominantly people can find it at vivabarneslaw.locals.com. It's Viva Fry and I. We do a Sunday show, a Sunday podcast, and then I do a lot of exclusive content for the members of the vivabarneslaw.locals.com community, which, by the way, is the one who introduced me to you. They had seen some of your videos back a ways and said, "Hey, here's a good follow on gun issues." I think all the way back to you covered the Butler assassination attempt. And they were the ones that they're a great curated source of knowledge and information. And in this case, other additional influencers that have contribute real value, which isn't always the case in the influencer world.
Well, no, I appreciate that. Well, I'm glad you found us, and you know what? I didn't even know that you and Viva Fry did stuff together. So I need to go check out those podcasts for sure. I love Viva Fry too. That's awesome, man. You guys are two legal powerhouses for sure. If you guys aren't following Viva Fry as well, make sure you go follow him on X. Just has done some great things as well. So what we want to talk about tonight, and as a matter of fact, what I'll do is I'll play a quick video that just kind of predicates everything that we're going to discuss, and there's a whole lot more to it, but we'll play this and we'll take it from there.
Your naval intelligence psychological operation where you tell us that that's a weird thing to do, okay? It's always somebody close to you, and if there's a financial motive, yeah. And I would say an organization of that size that misses their deadline, their tax deadline for the first time, that's a little weird.
Someone at Turning Point decided not to file 3 of the 4 of their annual financial statements 4 months before Charlie Kirk appointed a new COO, requested a new audit, and was murdered.
All right, so that is just kind of the tip of the iceberg as far as the allegations. I know that Wolves and Finances have kind of brought to the fore against TPUSA. And Robert, I know I actually got some of the documents, the letter from the IRS to Erica Kirk and TPUSA that talks about what their situation is as regards to the IRS. But I guess, if you will, number one, if you want to address that specifically, or some of the other allegations against TPUSA as far as their financials go. And I also think it's really relevant to understand that going back to the Biden administration, the Biden administration was trying to take away their nonprofit status as well. So, this is going back for a really long time. And this kind of leads to the idea of what I've been telling people. Folks, they were going after TPUSA and Charlie Kirk long before Charlie Kirk was killed. And what's happening now, I really believe, is a concerted, engineered, and coordinated effort to do what they couldn't do to TPUSA while Charlie Kirk was alive. So, Robert, go ahead and just kind of address any of that stuff.
Sure. So, Turning Point is organized. I was friends with Charlie Kirk. He was incredibly influential in ways a lot of people didn't even know. So, if the Trump-Kennedy coalition, MAGA Maha coalition came about, we'd done some polling work with Richard Barris, People's Pundit Daily, who was also close with Charlie. And we did some work to show the power of that coalition, got the information to Charlie. Charlie got it to Trump World and was able to help bridge the coalition that came about. So, 2024 election may not have happened without Charlie Kirk, just in that one aspect. Of course, his Get Out the Vote operation, Turning Point Action, which was misrepresented by Wolves and Finance, by the way, was the best Get Out the Vote operation that the Republicans had in 2024. So when he set up Turning Point, you have different parts of it that serve different purposes. And so you're usually going to have a very complex set of entities, because you're going to have entities dedicated to sort of nonpartisan, nonprofit work. You're going to have some entities dedicated to partisan, political, but still nonprofit work. One's a 501c3, one's a 501c4, referencing which sections of the tax code they stem from. And you structure them that way so that people can make certain donations that can be tax deductible. Now, you're going to have for-profit enterprises in order for this to really work. So you're going to have parts of Turning Point that are for-profit enterprises. So you're going to have, and then you have different state laws that govern charitable work. Not only that, if you're Charlie and you're going to be a high-profile target, that means in states like California, states like New York, you got to be careful about how you structure things. You're likely going to have a state version that's separate, that's not even a subsidiary, but is independent, so that they can't use an attack on the state entity to come after the federal entity. So like years ago, I helped set up 1776 Law Center to do a lot of legal advocacy for underrepresented causes and cases and clients. But we structured it to not even have any 501c3 or 501c4. We made it just a for-profit entity because of how much harassment happens. So I represented a lot of people that were in the Tea Party that got caught up in the attack by the Obama administration. It's just a source of attack. But if you're in that world and people want to make tax-deductible donations, you have to have some 501c3s and 501c4s that they can utilize. So, but due to the nature of the tax laws and state regulatory infrastructure, you're going to have a very complex infrastructure within to be able to achieve all the different things Turning Point wanted to achieve and Charlie wanted to achieve through it. So there's a lot. It's easy to get confused about the way deductions work, about when the filings occur, about how the filings occur. And people like Wolves in Finance and others who have no understanding at all of the non-for-profit tax world and no real understanding of how Turning Point operates. To give you an idea of how bad he was, he suggested that Turning Point Action was this sneaky group that was siphoning off money because it suddenly got a bunch of money in 2024. Well, that was his get out the vote operation. So, of course, it was a separate organization because it's going to be a political purpose. So it can't be a 501c3. It has to be a 501c4. And, of course, it's going to have a lot of money spent in the year that the election was because that's what it was. But that's the kind of basic stuff he got wrong.
Let me just pause it because one thing that I don't understand, and obviously I'm not an accountant, a tax lawyer, or forensic accountant, or anything else, but it would seem to me that just on the face of it, it'd be a real challenge to do some sort of forensic accounting from outside the organization, looking at, we have a nonprofit. And I know like when we file our taxes and things like that, that stuff gets posted eventually, but it's not immediate. And it could be months and months and months where we could have already done everything that we needed to do. But that paperwork isn't public for months and months at a time. Like, how can someone outside the organization reasonably do any sort of, forensic accounting with any sort of integrity and give that information to the public?
They really can't. You could look at the their various Form 990s that they file and make some inferences about somebody getting paid X amount or something else, but it's going to be very limited because there's no way you're going to see the whole picture. The whole picture is going to be much more complicated and not publicly disclosed. And there was nothing, if there was anything anomalous in Turning Point, they were going to put Charlie under because he was under constant IRS scrutiny, constant harassing state scrutiny, and a bunch of statements have been misinterpreted. Like he liked what Doge was doing. So he thought, hey, it'd be cool if we use Doge to see if we have maximum efficiency. It's not because he had any suspicions about an entity he really strictly controlled. Charlie had his finger on the pulse across the board. This wasn't like a James O'Keefe. Like, the only big high-profile charity that hasn't filed returns has been Project Veritas since they kicked out James O'Keefe. That's somebody that suddenly stopped filing returns and information. It's not Turning Point. They were lying, of course. The Turning Point had timely filed their returns and information as confirmed by the IRS. If you knew Charlie, you knew there was no chance he was going to miss anything like that. What they're doing is they're extrapolating from people's lack of understanding of how NGOs work, lack of understanding of how a Turning Point entity, which is going to have for-profit components, profit components, other components. Also, you may see one entity plug in a lot of labor and expenses and cost. Maybe you put it under this umbrella rather than that umbrella for tax purposes. But that the people drawing broad conclusions, oh, look, it was $3 million. This must meant they were paid this amount. Probably not, because those are just different tax ways to maximize tax advantage so that you can keep the business running at the most efficient level. And he had Turning Point running at an extraordinarily efficient level. I think it kind of shocked a lot of people on the left because as a general rule, the right has done a poor job of public fundraising for NGOs, hasn't done nearly as much. The left is so committed to their causes. Legal defense funds will get $1 million overnight. You even see it, with Candace setting it up for this obvious serial abuser and cheat and liar and fraud, which is what that guy was, she's able to raise six figures for him overnight. Those kind of causes can, but usually it's been tough on the right. So he ran this with a very clean ship, very strict operation. There were always internal audits being done. His idea to incorporate Doge was, Doge is cool. Let's see if we can use some of the cool things they do in terms of how they use algorithms. And in particular, it would be things like, could we save money? Could we reduce cost on certain vendors? That's what he's looking at. Nothing internal to Turning Point. He had no concerns with that. He talked with me. He talked with Richard Barris, talked with other people that are in our circle, and that there just wasn't any, there was no reason to believe there was anything wrong at Turning Point whatsoever.
So, during this entire time where he was talking about Doge and things like that, you were somebody that was working with him on some of these issues, or at least he was bouncing ideas off of you. What was your relationship with TPUSA at the time, Robert?
So my relationship was purely political. So
Okay.
It was to get ideas with Richard Barris to Charlie when certain things we thought were going AWOL, or we saw an opportunity present, or we saw an issue being percolate up. I was available if any help was needed, but he never needed any help on the tax law side. Everything was a buttoned up shop. But if the IRS had come after him, I was going to help represent him and would be happy to do so. I've represented a range of groups in those settings, but there was the IRS put them under massive scrutiny. They were trying to find any pretext to recreate what they did with the Tea Party movement with Obama in 2014, which was to basically harass them out of existence. And they were so buttoned up that the IRS couldn't even find an avenue of attack. That's how clean they were. And the reason why the IRS suspected something was AWOL is because most NGOs are like the Somali kind of operations. So
Right.
There's a lot of shenanigans that go on. And that's why if you contrasted, say, Turning Point's 990 forms, it's both more full disclosing, timely filed, and more compliant with the tax law than a lot of other NGOs. If you go looking at some other NGOs in 990 forms, you'll find a lot of oddities and peculiarities that you do not see in any of the Turning Point documents, because he had to keep it crystal clean. Because even with Trump getting elected, there was still concern that the rogue agencies would still harass him and harangue him. So he was always super hyper conscious of making sure that was buttoned up. Some of the best auditing firms in the country and accounting firms are on top of it. And people are trying to make a deal about, some suggestion of private inurement, that sort of thing. That's why he carefully structured it. So you had NGOs doing one activity in terms of the non-for-profit, the partisan and non-political ones doing different activities, him doing separate business activities. That's why parts of Turning Point have for-profit enterprises, because to work business-wise, you need that to be outside of the regulatory framework because of all the private inurement rules. That basically, if you benefit too much or disproportionate, then you can get hit with a range of taxes and have a bunch of consequences. So he ran as clean a shop in an NGO as anybody I've ever known.
So when people are saying, and I've heard a bunch of different numbers thrown out, 3 million, 8 million, there was all this money missing, and he was going to do an audit, and this is why they ultimately decided that he had to go. That's the allegation that's being placed. But so where does this $3 billion or $8 million come from that, Wolves in Finance, among other people, are trying to claim that was missing to begin with?
His basis was kind of absurd. So to give you an example, he suggested that the Turning Point action was somehow all bogus, and that was bogus money that had disappeared without Charlie knowing. Turning Point action was Charlie's idea. We had discussed it with him, Richard Barris and I, and Barris in particular, about how to develop a get out the vote organization, because the Republican Party was frankly inadequate at doing so. So he came up with the idea before 2024 for Turning Point action, created it, put it in motion, and the fees that are getting paid are regular. In fact, to be honest with you, they're actually cheaper than a lot of other people would have cost for a lot of those services. Like Wolves in Finance was saying, that this amount must be excessive. And it's like, no, for political get out the vote operations, a lot of reasons why you need people that are trained at that. And you need, like Robert Kennedy, for example, in his campaign. There are a bunch of saboteurs in the Democratic Party who were out getting signatures for him. And they were deliberately creating fake signatures to sabotage his effort to get on the ballot. I've represented a bunch of people in the petition circulation business to get on the ballot. That's why I've represented all those political parties over the years. And there's so many bad faith actors in that business that you have to hire true proven professionals. And so he supposedly said, oh, this money over to Turning Point Action must be bogus and hidden and secret. Completely false, because he didn't know what Turning Point Action even was, didn't know what Turning Point itself was. And then even went further, several of the Turning Point entities operate off of a mailbox. My law firm's out of a mailbox. For a lot of security reasons, after I represented the Covington kids, I had bomb threats called in. So for security reasons, if you went to my official office, it's a mail drop office. Because I don't want randos showing up wanting to do other things. So that's what Turning Point had a bunch of those, right? Like UPS store and that kind of thing. And the Wilson finance guy said, oh, I came to the parking lot and there's no business. There's just a strip mall. It's no business. It must all be fake. His story is fake. That's one of the most common things. And especially Charlie's business, there's no way you want to have a bunch of public addresses that any rando can show up at. So you're going to use mail drops as your official address for registration purposes of
Robert,
these business entities.
The left has never, committed violence against its political, enemies. But I don't know why you would think that would be something that they would do.
Yeah, exactly. So I watched both of his reports, Wolves in Finance. I had previously followed him because he did some interesting financial analysis. He's a young guy, clearly unfamiliar with the way tax laws work. And then it became clear he was acting in bad faith, because he misled. He didn't tell people that there was a UPS store there, that was where the mailbox was, that's what this was. He misled them into thinking there's fake phantom businesses with phantom entities that suddenly show up in 2024 that are diverting billions of dollars, when it's just Charlie's turn out the vote operation that had a voter registration, or its office business registration, because that's public filing. Your 990 is a public filing. I've represented a range of NGOs that do not list their actual business address on those forms, because everybody knows those forms. So like Robert Kennedy's Children's Health Defense, they're not going to use the address where people are walking in every day, because that's very dangerous because of how many people were targeting Children's Health Defense, especially when they were exposing COVID and exposing the COVID vaccine. And Robert Kennedy, of course, has had many threats against his life. His own father was murdered. His uncle was murdered, of course, famously. So this is very commonplace for anybody with a security concern at any level. You're going to be using a mailbox or a drop box as your location. You're not going to be registering your actual physical everyday office address on a publicly filed tax form when you have security threats of the kind that Charlie faced, of the kind that other people in Turning Point face. So that was very commonplace, very ordinary, in fact, good practice. And he made it sound like it was some sort of criminal conspiracy of hiding this entity in this secret location that was a phantom business that was diverting the money. And he's attacking some of Charlie's closest friends. These are people Charlie built a business and he avoided some of the risks that James O'Keefe, because James O'Keefe Charlie saw that. I remember advising James on this as well, that with these NGOs, the risk is you get people on the board that are bad faith actors. And so he was careful to only put people he knew very well and very personally in these key positions of power and influence. He was very careful about that, how he structured it, how he ran it. So the people she's attacking are some of his closest friends, lifelong friends in several cases. And that's what makes it even nastier and more pernicious. Not a surprise given Candace's history. There isn't a single person that has platformed her or supported her that she has not betrayed at some point in her life or career. It's just who she is.
Speaking of which, Robert, one of the things I want to say to the chat over here, look, if you are suspicious of TPUSA, this entire stream is for you. And in a little while, we're going to open it up to questions. Now, again, if you want to learn something, if you're here to, explore some objective truths, or at least to hear a different side of the story and then decide for yourself whether or not what Robert and TPUSA are saying, that's on you. But if you would like to have an opportunity to actually dig down to this and understand whether or not these accusations that there's money missing and all this other things are true, that's who this is for. Like, I don't believe that TPUSA is missing money. just because I know what kind of attacks they were coming under from the IRS during the Biden administration. That being said, I do think that being a nonprofit and just being any sort of entity, we have to make sure that they're being held accountable and being responsible with people's money. I'm all for accountability. But I think we've gotten to a point in this whole discussion about TPUSA. I think there's been so much disinformation and it's at such a fevered pitch that people have stopped listening to the truth. They've already concluded whatever they've decided the conclusion that they would prefer, whatever narrative they prefer, and they're not listening. And that can be on both sides of this discussion. So that's what this live stream is about. And I hope that you guys can be respectful enough over in the chat to where we don't have to ban you, because if you're going to be disruptive and you're just going to go with ad hominems, we're going to ban you. But this live stream is for you. And you can listen to what tax attorney Robert Barnes is saying about this, who understands this stuff at a very high level. And we're going to give you an opportunity to ask questions, and those can be challenging. Those can be, however you want to do that. But I hope you at least listen to what's going on here so that you have both sides of the story, and then you can make a fair assessment of who's telling the truth.
And what you see through is the way they were structured is very normal for what Charlie was set out to do. Everything I've seen from the returns is very normal, nothing unusual there at all. And what people have made a big deal out of is misunderstanding basic information. And that's easy to do in the tax construct. I mean, this is like people are like, how in the world did Donald Trump avoid paying taxes all those years? If you understand the real estate business, you understand that there are tons of ways it's designed to tax incentivize certain kind of business structures and business. Same with oil depreciation, things like this, that the tax laws are not always written to maximize revenue. They're written to control public policy and to try to get people to behave in a particular way and businesses to do things. Now, often it's kickbacks to lobbyists and all that jazz. But the tax laws are a joke, and I understand people getting confused by them because nobody can really read them. I had a client once, Joe Banister, IRS whistleblower, that the IRS, of course, went after he blew the whistle on him, appeared on 60 Minutes, other programs. He'd actually read the whole code. And the judge was like, is he crazy? Who reads the entire Internal Revenue Code? So that was Joe, old school guy, honest, true believer in every respect. We got full acquittals for him, which was great. But they didn't stop him from harassing him. So I understand. So it's easy with tax and accounting to confuse the normie. And so at first I thought maybe Wills and Finance was just getting confused. But then when I saw he was being deliberately deceptive, it was like Candace. At the beginning, I was like, okay, maybe she's just off the res and wants to connect things to other. And then it became clear, no, this is disingenuous. And this is what I would say to the people out there who think they're discovering the true conspiracy. You're actually being led away from the true conspiracy, because what we should be investigating is who was it that told Turning Point that building would be secure that day? And why wasn't it secure? Why did they mislead him about drone access? It sounds like from you going up there that, in fact, the university is mistaken and thinks they own all the airspace above them. Yeah. But, those are issues because this could happen again. So whether it's negligence, recklessness, or deliberate intent, that's what we should be looking at. We should be looking at the Trantifa movement. We should be looking at Arms Queer Salt Lake City. We should be looking at whether there was any FBI or CIA or other people nudging him on these online discussion boards. And so I think I accidentally did the thumb thing. I don't know how this works, but someone shows up. But so these are the conspiracies we should be looking at. Are George Soros organizations connected to this Trantifa radicalization? They're making Manchurian candidates out of middle America. This kid 18 months ago was totally normal, libertarian-leaning middle Utah. And all of a sudden, he becomes so radicalized that he's smugly, as you can see him in court, and in even his mugshot, he's smug about what happened. He feels good. He thinks they should build statues to him for what he did. So how do they radicalize? Because if they can radicalize Tyler Robinson, they can radicalize anybody. These are the questions we should be asking. Who's doing this? Who's complicit? There's people that are going to be overtly complicit. In other words, I think the partner was. I think the message to his confession to the Discord board, I think, was a tip-off. It was, hey, by the way, I've been caught. Anybody that knows anything, take your precautions. Now, he's not going to say it that way. He's going to say, I've been caught, it was really me, and act like nobody was involved. But the only reason you would write that to that board, or the most likely reason, is members of that board were complicit, maybe planning it, thinking about it. Clearly, I think he had help in the process, given his confidence.
Well, I think what's interesting is that all of his messages were exculpatory for everyone receiving them. And I think that is, again, I definitely think his messages, his text messages to Lance Twiggs was completely fabricated to get him off the hook. And I agree with all those other things. And, this is the problem. I still see people down in the comments saying, Brian Harpole lied about being able to fly drones at UVU. I can tell you from firsthand experience, that is not a lie. UVU will not allow people to fly drones. I had to go off campus and fly the drone. And I did it, not knowing what was going to happen. We were just going to take that risk. Obviously, the security team can't go off campus and fly the drone and still, have good comms, see what's going on. And there's a whole lot of issues with that. And quite frankly, another one with the drone issue is that area that we mapped out was over 150 acres. They would have needed at least 5 to 6 drones, which means you have to have 6 drone operators, and then you'd have to have 2 or 3 extra drones ready to go up when those drones started to lose battery. So, there's so much misinformation, and this goes back to what you were saying about wolves in finance. It's the omission of facts that these people constantly, Candace continues to omit actual evidence and just makes up other stuff over here and says things like, oh, you know what, you need to be Spider-Man to scale the walls to get to the roof. And it's little things like this they continue to build narratives out of that are just false. The allegation is false, the foundation on which it was built is false, and then on top of that, they completely omit any sort of evidence that contradicts the narrative that they want to push. And clearly that's what you're saying. I've watched some of the wolves and finance stuff. It's number one, I find it boring, is the real answer. And I don't find it that interesting. And, it's kind of above my head when it comes to all the taxes and trying to figure out whether or not this is true. It's just not my area of expertise.
Oh, exactly. And I think the other aspect of all this, so I think people that think they're doing the real investigation should realize they're following Candace. They're being misled away from the real investigation. That, they'll often say, oh, you trust the FBI. I don't trust the FBI at all. I've waged legal war on them for about a quarter century. So I'm the guy that thinks the January 6th person, they say Brian Cole, is a patsy. I don't think he's the guy who did it at all. I think it's a former current CIA employee who did it. But so I have no problem. But one thing that's critical, I encourage people to study things like COINTELPRO, PSYOPs, etc. I mean, years ago, the Bolsheviks pulled this off. They created an anti-Bolshevik entity to get everybody together, and they thought they were working together to take down the Bolsheviks. And it was actually secretly run by the Bolsheviks so they could spot all their enemies, right? So COINTELPRO was famous for this. The Malcolm X assassination happened in large part because the FBI sowed false information within the Nation of Islam concerning what Malcolm X was doing. So if you let's say you have a real conspiracy that could implicate powerful people like George Soros and others, maybe even rogue government agencies and actors in a Manchurian Candidate type project, you would be paranoid that the smartest, most thorough, most skeptical people would find out. So how do you keep them from finding out? You give them a patsy, and you give them and that's what I think Candace is creating the patsy. Candace is the psyop to lead people away from making meaningful investigations and inquiry as to the broader story of Tyler Robinson and how it happened and how that could impact our security going forward. Both the university's complicity and the lack of security that they appear to have been overtly involved in at some level, but also a range of other individuals, including that whole trans community. I mean, I do a lot of pro bono work for my whole legal career representing victims of abuse. So, guys like Snow, you could see coming a mile away. But I think it reflects what Candace wanted to hear, so she puts him on platforms. Most people would have the discernment to not know. People keep comparing her to Alex Jones. I'm like, Alex is extremely careful. He has read a ridiculous amount of material, and you very rarely see him make any accusation that's that particular that doesn't end up having verifiable truth in the end, more often than not. He's hyper conscious, but he understands what templates work. Like as you were breaking it down to someone in the military, Even if you had the military plan an assassination, what they don't do is show up at a particular base where some rando lunatic can walk in on them. The idea that they would do it that way is just preposterous. So it's not knowing how the templates of power really operate. And I have encouraged people, use Candace as a lesson, as a life lesson. How to distinguish between, you don't have to choose the FBI or Candace Owens. You can choose someone totally opposite of that, because usually the truth is going to be in neither camp, because the Candace of the world are leading you away from the truth. And that doesn't mean you have to go trust the FBI. It means we should be looking at the broader, bigger story of Tyler Robinson. Who was he connected to? Who radicalized him? Whether they're government actors, NGO actors, the whole trans movement. I represent tons of victims of domestic abuse over the years. Number one flag that you are guaranteed to end up in a violent relationship is if you are involved with a trans relationship. Trans relationships have a violence level over 80%. And that's with their most intimate partners. This isn't even dealing with all the violence that occurs outside of the intimate relationship by people connected to trans. Because if you can convince people that they're not the gender God gave them, what else can you convince them of? It's like the ultimate Manchurian candidate possibility. They become very susceptible to all kinds of brainwashing, which we've seen in live time with Tyler Robinson, but she's totally not curious about that, totally not investigating any of that. No investigation into George Soros, no investigation into all the Soros NGOs that prop this up, no investigation into all armed queers. The investigation got shut down that was trying to be run by ODNI, Joe Kent, a former military guy himself who lost his wife due to our stupid wars overseas all over the place. He was trying to investigate potential foreign ties to Tyler Robinson and those groups, because you dig deep, you're going to find a lot of them get NGO money, and that some of those are going to be tied to foreign governments and internet, even the UN. I mean, the UN is deeply connected to all the illegal immigration. They've been helping to fund a lot of the NGOs that are literally doing the trafficking into the United States through El Salvador, Panama, and all the rest. And so those are areas we should be looking at, but we're not, because Candace is busy accusing Erica Kirk, accusing TPUSA, accusing the security team, accusing the U.S. government, accusing everybody except who actually did it. And what she's doing is she's giving the capacity for the people who will most believe her are trans people themselves. So that when they get on the jury, they can say, oh, I know from Candace, it was their own person who did it. And so they can feel good about acquitting Tyler Robinson, which would be the most ultimate travesty and slap in the face to Charlie Kirk, would be to orchestrate a conspiracy that leads to Tyler Robinson walking free. And that's what she's really doing. And a lot of people out there that are supporting her and cheerleading her don't want to admit that about themselves. They don't want to admit what they're doing is helping a murderer get away with it. They're helping a true conspiracy get away with it, because we need to look at these things broader and deeper, or it will happen again and again and again, like it did with trans shooters in Minnesota, like it did with trans shooters in Nashville.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. That's one of the things. Number one, I actually went and interviewed Chase Hughes. I don't know if you know who he is. But he kind of is well known for understanding mind control, how it works in psychology. And that's why I wanted to get his take on all this stuff, was because I have, and it's kind of an open theory. It's not like it's mine, but you kind of brought it up. I do think that there's something particular about trans and maybe even the LGBTQ community in general that make it much more easier to target and or radicalize and weaponize and direct toward a target that they want to. So I think, because we see this trend, and what it is like we see these trans shooters coming up or people associated with that movement. And then on top of that, like, they're dead, they're gone. Then we don't get any answers to anything that happened. We don't see any sort of digital footprint. We don't see any of that. And I find that very suspicious. And this goes with Thomas Crooks as well. I still think that there is a cover up. I do think that Thomas Crooks was radicalized and weaponized and actually directed at Donald Trump. But we haven't seen any of that information. And I think it's ludicrous to think that he doesn't have an expansive digital footprint. And we haven't seen that. Now, that could be for a couple different reasons, as I've talked about before. It could be that, we have a deep state that's involved that is covering that up. Number two, the government can know about it, but doesn't want to release that information because maybe they're investigating that aspect, and or they just don't want the public to know because they don't want them to know how effective this is and scare the public. I don't know what the reason is, but I think there's a clear pattern that, and I also think that it's so much easier to radicalize someone and point them toward a target like Charlie Kirk, as opposed to get 15 different shooters and, possibly compromise this large network of people because you have to physically be on the ground. I think it's just easier to radicalize somebody online, to find them, to identify a certain profile that is more susceptible toward, we'll just call it psychological manipulation in that manner. And that is something that's not being explored. And that's where we're going to be shifting focus middle of this week, because I want to focus on that. No one else really is. And I think it's really important. I think people need to see what's going on here. And you're right. There's a whole bunch of people. If we look at what the effects of Candace's campaign is, it is, number one, taking the spotlight off of the left. Number two, it is undermining the Trump administration. What I also see is that most of the people that are Candace followers happen to also be never Trumpers. They happen to be on the left. What it's also doing is undermining our faith and trust, and what little faith and trust we have left in our U.S. institutions. So there's a lot of people that would benefit from that. We always talk about we always say follow the money. Well, money is just a tool. What they want is power and influence. And if we see what is the power and influence that is being gained from this entire campaign, it is foreign operatives. It is definitely the deep state. The deep state was trying to get rid of Charlie Kirk, TPUSA, prior to Trump's reelection, and they didn't stop. All they did was change tactics. And I think at a minimum, I don't know if Candace is directly involved with this, but at a minimum, she is being exploited and being used by all these other foreign and or political actors, I think, without a doubt.
No doubt. I've said that she's either a useful idiot, which can be an unwitting, unknowing, complicit party in all of this, or a knowing person. I mean, she has just an unusual history. Now, I think the psychology that's at work in part is, is kind of starved for attention. She seems to be driven by that more than anything else. But the other thing is she has this propensity for betrayal. I don't know if you remember the Equalizer movie. This is the analogy I use. One of my favorite films, Denzel Washington, great film. I love The Equalizer growing up as a kid. Used to be part of my legal advertising, to equal the odds, all that kind of thing. So there's a scene where Denzel Washington is explaining to the Russian character, who's the lead villain, who had been, the backstory is that he was an abused kid who had a foster parent who took care of him and then died, mysteriously was murdered in a robbery. And Denzel Washington figures out the kid did it himself. And he says, and he gives him his psychoanalysis. And he says, I think you as a kid were so betrayed so often that when this guy actually loved you, you couldn't handle it. So you killed him because you thought you couldn't handle the betrayal that you thought must be coming. And there's Candace Owens, both of her parents abandoned her. She grew up with her grandparents as a black kid in a wealthy white community, Stamford, Connecticut. A history of crying wolf, whether it's race allegations or other things when she's in school. Gets a sweetheart deal with a landlord that's like a $3,500 penthouse. Finally has to evict her because she doesn't pay any rent. And then she accuses the landlord of putting in black mold and trying to cause her disease. And she loses terribly in court. But it gives you a sense. And then, PragerU, Dave Rubin, Daily Wire, and TPUSA are the people who platform her. She's turned on all of them now. She's betrayed all of them, attacks all of them, says they're all awful and horrible and evil and up to bad things. So this is the pattern with her psychologically. And the reason why I thought it couldn't just be attention driven is because there's attention to be drawn to the George Soros connection. There's attention to be drawn to the Antifa movement. There's attention to be drawn to Manchurian candidate recruitment by the likes of the CIA. You mentioned Chase Hughes. Yeah, Chase is a buddy of mine. Great guy. I represent him in whenever he's got a defamation issue or something else he has to deal with, where other people are defaming him and him not defaming them. But he's brilliant understanding mind control. And he will say that the susceptibility to mind control is increased with things like you don't know what gender you are. It's probably the easiest trigger to have full mind control. So I think those are the things we should be researching, should be investigating. And they have all these researchers running around making up numbers about tax returns, making up stories about Doge audits, making up claims about military bases, relying, Egyptian airplanes, the French Legion. Somehow bees are connected. Have you figured out how bees are connected? I'm still not figuring out how the bees are connected. I think she took that from the movie Beekeeper. I think that's where she got that from. But what's also going to happen, her and Nick Fuentes, you dig in, a lot of their, they have a lot of AstroTurf support. Like people start doing deep dives, and a majority of their X feed is bots. I don't know if you've noticed that. I get the same response.
Pointed out every single day.
Yeah, I mean, they're always there. My favorite bot account was one called "I Am a Real Man." I was like, I think that's probably evidence, maybe not. But I mean, they're always like 25 numbers after their name. It's some dude in India, going boop 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 boop, whatever it is.
And
a lot of the bot farms are.
Yeah, what I've seen as far as the bots go, because now that Elon is actually showing the country of origin on there, they've had to revert to old accounts. So you have two things are happening. They're either brand new accounts with like 25 to 100 followers that started in September, or they're these 8 or 10-year-old accounts that do, and both of them do nothing but retweet Candace and Ian Carroll and Baron Coleman. Like, you see this trend, and there's no human behind it, but number one, they're boosting their numbers, as in what they want to push, which is Candace's narrative and all of her downstreamers and everybody within her orbit. And then they come to accounts like mine and probably yours, and they just talk shit. And then they're trying to downvote like the opposition. And it's just ridiculous. And of course, there's real people out there that feel this way. I get it. But I'm just saying, I've been on X long enough to see, like, this person is saying all these, just trolling me, and I look on it, and guess what? They got 25 followers, 80 followers. They're a 10-year-old account, and they got 100 followers. Like, that isn't real, and it's very obvious, and I don't know where that's coming from, whether that's George Soros, whether that's foreign adversaries. But the point here is that there is real AstroTurf pushing her numbers on X, on YouTube, on Spotify, and everywhere else.
When I get a kick out of it, sometimes they'll come back and they'll critique me in ways that's so generic that you can tell it's like a bot, in the sense that they'll say, well, I guess you just love Israel and you get your $7,000 check. I'm like, I've been one of the highest profile critics of PB Netanyahu for the last year. So it's like somebody doesn't pay much attention. I'm the person who said, I think that the two Trump assassination attempts have deep state ties. Both the Ukraine guy in Florida, they managed to cover that all up. And nothing about Butler makes sense to me to this day, from just taking it as a straight narrative. And that kid, had like 4 phones? There was all this information we never got. I mean, his house was like wiped clean? I don't think so. He just happens to go to the firing range on the day the feds are there over and over again. I'm not buying. So, but the key is, if you want to explore the truth, even if it leads to information that questions powerful narratives of powerful institutions, what you have to stay away from is the crazy stories that are meant to distract you and discredit you. If I was Israel, I would be writing huge checks to Candace Owens and Nick Fuentes every day, because just by association, they make the criticism of Israel sound like, oh, you sound like Candace Owens. You sound like Nick Fuentes. Candace Owens thinks Stalin was a Jew. The Nick Fuentes, I've debated him. I've had long time things with him. And it was clear what he was doing was an old David Duke race grift. He's trying to moderate it now that Tucker let him sit down and talk with him and be a little more reasonable. But there was nothing about them. What they do is they actually discredit. I've been trying to tell Jimmy Dore this, because Jimmy Dore keeps and I like Jimmy, interviewed him before and so forth. But some of these people keep putting out Candace's kooky, crazy, loony, latest theories. And I'm like, what you're doing is helping the people that you think you're undermining. You think you're undermining the position of Israel in the United States, and whenever it wants to bomb somebody someplace somewhere, when in fact you're helping them, because you're affiliating and associating legitimate criticisms ordinary Americans have about being too involved in Middle Eastern wars on behalf of anybody, Israel or anyone else, with crazy people who think small Jewish conspiracies run the whole world, and that even Stalin was a Jew, and that maybe Joseph Mengele got a bad rap. I mean, I got prominent a little bit with Candace, because I've been warning about this for a while. Candace, I followed her all the way through. From the very beginning of Red Pill Conservative, when she first started her YouTube channel. And it was an unusual conversion. Didn't seem like a conversion of conscience, right? Someone that's been a liberal Democrat their whole life, their project to dox people doesn't go well with liberals. And so all of a sudden, overnight, they become a conservative. That sounds like convenient. And all of a sudden, they start getting lots of attention from conservatives. And that's when they become conservative. I was a little bit skeptical, but her timing was good because it was summer of 2016. You had a lot of people, there were Bernie supporters coming over to Trump. So she timed it really well. And being black helped. And she learned the lingo really, really fast. Yeah. That I give her credit for. But she had this habit of anybody that competed with her at any level. One, betraying anybody that ever really supported her. That was one red flag. But the other red flag was if any black conservative got prominent at all, briefly, she would libel them ruthlessly. She also libeled other people. She libeled Steven Crowder when he was trying to break the Nashville trans story. She libeled Nicole Arbor. She libeled a bunch of black conservatives who they'd come to me over the years complaining about this. So I was like, she's had a pattern of being an unreliable narrator that often is motivated by something personal that is completely disconnected from the actual story she's supposed to be covering. And so I was skeptical of it anyway. But like, take Macron. I have big criticisms of Macron. I mean, he's a Rothschild bank guy, clearly a bit of a perv. I mean, married a school teacher. I'm sorry, it's not normal. The affiliated and associated, and I think he wants to get us into World War III if he could over Ukraine. So I want criticism of Macron. But now Macron is going to be he's going to win that suit with ease. She's completely cooked because of what she said. People think, oh, he's just said Macron's wife is a man. No, she said Macron's wife is his father. That's what she said. It was one nutty 125 false statements I counted. It was just over the brother isn't really the brother. The sister isn't really the sister. This family member doesn't even really live. They're all part of a secret Jewish incestuous conspiracy theory. So what happens if Macron wins that suit? He gets to now discredit any criticism of him. Oh, you're saying stuff like Candace Owens. So this is how the game works. The COINTELPRO type operation is intended to be self-discrediting and divisive within the very community that would otherwise raise questions about government corruption.
The two most unfortunate things behind the Candace campaign. Number one is it completely destroys and attacks Charlie's life work, as well as all of the gains and momentum that he's made in the Conservative Party, especially in the youth, going back to the last few years. That's what that has done. Like, she has been more effective at that than I would have ever thought she would have been. But the other part of this, kind of what you're talking about, is the fact that it also undermines and discredits every single, independent news journalists, podcasters that are out there trying to get facts and information. Like, it just destroys the credibility, and we need it more than ever. We know that we don't have MSM because they did the exact same thing. They created narratives, and then they looked for evidence to push those narratives. They omitted facts that discredited the narrative that they're trying to push, and that's exactly what she's doing and other people are doing. So we're out fake newsing, the fake news, and that's what's going on with this. And it destroys the credibility of all these independent journalists. It really does.
Well, and people should just ask themselves, if Alex Jones is the one making up stories, why is he still off of YouTube and Candace Owens one of the biggest promoted people on YouTube? Right? They're a little the other thing is, here's somebody who made most of her money and bones connected to Israel supporting groups. PragerU, Horowitz's group, Daily Wire, Dave Rubin. So I was like, I'm a little bit curious how this sudden shift, wondering about how that's going to work. But you look at the broader contours, you're right. It discredits independent views. If you ask questions, that must mean, like, for years, I've represented people in the so-called tax protest movement. And that started off with some sincere questions, good questions, like, why does our tax law not define what income is? It just defines it in a self-referential and circular way. Why doesn't it have a clear liability section? Good questions. There's reasons Congress is hiding. Congress wants to be able to do a property tax down the road, disguised as a wealth tax that they're talking about now. But they want to get away with it by never having defined income. So the goal is to keep it legally flexible. But legally, historically, if you don't clearly define what's being taxed and don't who has to pay it, you're not under American legal principle, going all the way back to the English legal principles, you don't have to pay the tax. So they start off with these really good questions that go to the core of what the heck's going on and then what happens? They inject it with crazy ideas. And so all of a sudden, somebody that, first, just had a fundamental belief about raising questions, all of a sudden thinks that they're a UCC, that their birth certificate was sold to the census, that what's being sued is in maritime court, and that's a ship. And I've had these honest conversations with people. It's like, what happened? But what does it do to the normie out there? They hear any questions raised, I've heard that. That's all crazy, people. That's all crazy talk. Right? People who thought that if they go into the court and they don't pass the bar, that magically that they can't be held liable and some other things like that. I mean, it's some interesting thoughts. But and it becomes a laughingstock, right? Sovereign citizen becomes a joke. But these people had fair, reasonable questions. How does the relationship between the government and individual work? Does the tax law, is it properly being applied or not? And those questions get ignored and drowned out by the disinformation and the COINTELPRO type operation that that builds divisions within the movement and discredits them to the normie. And that's effectively what Candace is doing. She's discrediting any second guessing, any questions about the Tyler Robinson murder by coming up with loonier and loonier, nuttier and nuttier, wackier and wackier ideas and theories and themes. And whether it's because of some psychosis that she has, whether it's this sense of betrayal. I mean, Charlie boosted her tremendously. And she's taking advantage of the fact that Charlie never cut ties with anybody. Charlie was the great bridge builder. The two real deep enemies of Charlie were the American deep state and various foreign governments, because Charlie was, for example, people don't know this, but he was the reason why we didn't escalate in Iran beyond the bombing. That there was talk within the White House of us actually going into Iran and trying to do a full regime change operation. And Charlie was the guy in the White House saying, you can't do it, you can't do it, you can't do it. And he was someone who had credibility with Trump, credibility with J.D. Vance, credibility with key people there, because he is the big young conservative that helped create 2024 in the first place.
And he probably let him know that he wouldn't support him to do it. And he was the reason they got elected. I think the amount of influence and power because of what Charlie did, I think will always be underestimated. I don't think people really understand how influential he really was. And I know there's a lot of people that talk about that he could have been, a future president. Maybe that was on his radar, maybe not. What I would like to just kind of bringing it back to, the tax structure of TPUSA, and then I want to get to some questions. I know there's a bunch of questions about that, and I want to get the audience in here a little bit. What should people know ultimately about the claims, like people with Wolves and Finance, and all the claims and allegations of impropriety when it comes to their funds in general? And then, what would you like them to know about TPUSA when it comes to, their finances?
So there was nothing wrong at all with any aspect of TPUSA's finances. They were clearly complied with tax law. There was no fraud there, no evidence of any fraud there, misappropriation of any kind there. Charlie didn't suspect any kind of misappropriation. He always wanted to act at maximum efficiency. He was the most efficient operator under the most scrutiny of any NGO in the last half century. I mean, so he was very disciplined about that. All the accusations are false. There's no proof to them whatsoever. If you look at the 990 forms, they completely comply with existing tax law. That's why you've seen nobody, like people on the left that hate Turning Point, they haven't come out and made any of these claims, because nobody who understands tax law could credibly say anything bad about their tax returns. And
I had thought about that. That would have been red meat for the left, and I hadn't seen them act on that at all. And that is a really good point on that.
The other aspect of that is, I mean, the number one, like, cui bono of the American deep state was the left. The hard left, especially like the Trantifa movement and others, recognized Charlie was the most effective conservative in the country, more effective than Donald Trump at reaching young people, right? The very institutions that they inculcate their radical values he was reversing course entirely as a one-man band doing it. And so they had the number one motivation to take him out. There was talk that J.D. Vance was going to consider Charlie for vice president, other things like that down the road. So those kind of things were afoot, but that was more a decade plus away from him being elevated into public office. But it was the hard left that had captured our institutions, that saw that Charlie was the only one. Ben Shapiro was doing his little things and whatnot. He never broke through. Charlie did. And Charlie broke through in a big way. And then he managed to break through in new ways because he was the behind, what people didn't know, he was the behind the scenes bridge builder. All any of us had to do to get information to Trump, Vance, other people was get it to Charlie. And the Trump administration balancing their position on Israel, a more geopolitical realist position that at times they go back and forth on whether they're going to get there or not. But that was heavily inspired by Charlie, saying, look, this is where young MAGA is. This is where we need to go. But he tried to keep everybody in the fold. And he's one of those guys, I once said, only person I've apologized to in arguing was Charlie Kirk. Because I was like, hey, I think I really hammered him on some stuff. And he emailed me, he's like, oh, here's what actually happened. And I was like, that guy got it wrong. Sorry, apologize. So that's who Charlie was. He was impossible to dislike. He was the living reincarnation of everything great about Reagan. You know, the sunny optimism, the idealism, that you don't turn on a brother, all of those things. And and I think Candace had some other ambitions with Charlie all the way back that she was disappointed by and things that happened. I think there's maybe more reasons she's anti-Erica than people know about, but I'll leave that as is for now. But Charlie was one of the great Americans, and we dishonor and disrespect his legacy and his life by letting Candace Owens spread false conspiracies that could let his murderer walk free. And the true conspirators never get even investigated.
Well, and I think that's a problem that we have in society as general. Like, it's not just Charlie, it's not just TPUSA, and it's not just Erica. It is, look, there's something to the fact that we as a society have always agreed upon, and it's really an American principle that this country is built upon. We do not accuse people of crimes unless we have evidence. It's just not how it works. And then if you are going to accuse somebody of a crime, you have the evidence. The burden of proof is on the accuser, and we don't blackmail someone into proving their innocence. That is our justice system, our American principles turned on its head. And that's not how it should be. It never has been before. And now it's not only accepted, it's encouraged, and unfortunately it's become monetized.
Absolutely. The way I put it was, she put out that proof, and I was like, the proof is let's say somebody breaks into your house, gets caught and removed, and then says, oh, I saw you murder someone inside the house. And it's like, so you get to make that kind of extraordinary claim because you broke into my house? Because, yeah. It was insane. The logic that they're going, it's what they want to believe for a range of psychological reasons. Plus, he's very good at it. She has all the fingerprints of a psyop. Do you know what I mean? And then you look at, she's married to the son of a British lord. You know what I mean? If I'm looking for unusual connections, it ain't in Erica Kirk's family. It's who Candace is married to. There's all kinds of issues there. She was known as Queen Candace all the way back to CPAC. I remember 2018. All the other conservatives called her Queen Candace because that was her mindset already. So the idea that we're going to let this queen, I call her the Queen of QAnon now. She's just QAnon part 2. And if you remember going through that, I took tons of crap because I said I called out QAnon early on because I was like, this is a rogue intel operation. This feels like a psyop. It's intended to divert people who are doing good research and good work into not doing that. They're not looking at the deep aspects of Russiagate, not looking at what was going to happen in the 2020 election, because QAnon said all of it's taken care of and all of it's fine. And QAnon and the lady that got killed on January 6th, she went in there thinking that the generals and the white hats wanted them to go take over the Capitol so they could arrest the bad faith actors, because he believed all this QAnon stuff. And I remember, and if you look at the way people respond, the cultish mindset, her own techniques, they're all QAnon techniques. They're not built on good reason. That's why she can never win a trial. If she went to trial, she's going to get cooked in the Macron case. And anybody else suing her is going to be able to win with ease too, because you can see how careless she is. She doesn't vet anything. She doesn't vouch for anything. She appeals based on emotion, not based on logic. It's psychological and emotional driven appeal meant to manipulate people. That's why your audience is also disproportionately women more than men. And she's very good at it. But this is QAnon part 2, the sequel. And they've just found a very useful idiot, maybe knowingly, maybe unknowingly, but who is spreading QAnon part 2 for the same disruptive, divisive purposes within the populist movement. And at the same time, it distracts from the true criminals who are going to keep getting away with it if we keep getting caught in the Candace QAnon trap.
What is the odds of TPUSA winning a defamation suit against? We already know the answer. I think I know the answer against Candace. Forget about that. But against Wolves and Finances. I mean, he's alleging a lot of impropriety with. I mean, I don't know, with really zero evidence. What's your thoughts on that?
It would be very easy. And I've told Turning Point, I also want Turning Point to I know the law enforcement wants them to step back, but I want them to dig in deeper. I think there's a potential lawsuit against the university. I think there's prophylactic value to bringing some of those claims, even though it's tough to sue government officials because of all the sovereign immunity they have and different kinds of qualified immunity, et cetera. It's still useful to put them on notice because these universities that are making it difficult to secure the facility for a conservative speaker should know they could get legally sued for it and maybe have to pay a big verdict. Just the risk of it will motivate them to reconsider their security protocol so that conservatives can safely be on campus. And things like completely misappropriating who can use drones and who can't, as an example of that. But also who did the security that day, who told Turning Point that the building was going to be secure.
Yeah.
I mean, because Turning Point had identified the risk.
And they have like they have campus police. I think there's like 42 officers or something around those numbers. They had plenty of police where they could have actually secured their own physical buildings, right? That's their physical security that they're responsible for. In the same way that if somebody went up there just to look at Charlie, climbed upon the roof to view this, if they fell off that roof, the UVU would be responsible. It wouldn't have been, TPUSA and the security team and everything else. The fact is that they failed to mitigate the risks of their own physical security, and they should be held accountable for sure.
And it helps deter other universities because more full investigation at Trantifa and all the rest. But Turning Point would easily win any of these cases because people are putting out easily provably factually false statements, and they're not really opinion statements. Like Wolves in Finance made he made the factual claim that there was no place for an office to exist when in fact he knew the UPS store was there and aligned with it. He just flat out lied about it. That's just one example. And he told some of those you could get away with as opinion, saying he didn't know that Turning Point Action was actually Charlie's creation and so forth. Some of that you could get away with, but specific statements like that, that is what you can nail them with. And I think all these people, I know it's in the spirit of Charlie for them not to sue anybody on that because Charlie wanted to keep the right together, didn't want to divide anybody. He had I'll be honest with you, almost a magical personal touch with people behind the scenes. So Erica's respecting that. That's why she met with Candace, because that was what Charlie would do. I think Erica's more, she wouldn't necessarily, she's stronger, as Charlie himself said, she's more conservative than he is in many respects. So I think there are people within Turning Point that would like to take legal action in these cases, but they don't want to divide the conservative movement even further. And so they're going to be very careful and cautious. And to their credit, their ability to stay I couldn't believe the criticism of the conference. I was like, these are young people. So it tends to be flashy, tends to have cool lights, tends to have, little dance parties with James O'Keefe. That's, her dressing up in a cool way. That's who they are. That's who those young people are.
Well, and I went back. I was hearing all that on X. I was like, hold on, and what the image that they were trying to portray is like, now that Charlie's gone, they've just defiled this whole thing. They've turned this into some big abomination of a whatever. And then I went back and I got pictures from 2024 with Charlie there. It's the exact same thing. It's the same lights. It's the same pyrotechnics. It's the same special effects. There's an image of Charlie coming out. There's pyrotechnics going on. There's a smoke machine rolling smoke that he walks through with Donald Trump. Like, it's the exact, like, nothing has changed other than the fact that, unfortunately, we don't have Charlie on the stage. That's what it comes down to.
Oh, exactly. And because people forget when Kennedy met Trump, that was at a Turning Point event in Arizona. And remember, it ended up being an iconic shot because of all the lights going on in the background. Everybody loved that. They said it was the best photo of 2024 campaign. I mean, other than Trump's fight in Butler. And so and that was more, not an intended photo shoot at the time. So that was very Charlie. I'll give them credit. Their ability to withstand all this. I mean, she loses her husband. I mean, my father passed away when I was young. So I'm sensitive. I've told people you cross a red line if you start bashing a widow. That I'm not going to have much mercy and much patience for it, and I'm going to expose it and call it out for what it is.
Yeah.
The for her to be a young widow of young children whose husband and whose father just died in a horrific assassination, and keep the organization going, even when you have Candace Owens and all these other crazies and kooks attacking you daily for keeping the organization going, for trying to sustain it, for trying to keep his mission alive and in his spirit. And for all those young people to put together that event in a very short order, just like they did with the funeral, the memorial proceedings, was really extraordinary. These kids are going to beyond normal lengths. A lot of people, the easiest thing to do, look at most public assassinations. The movement usually dies, right? I mean, to a degree, civil rights movement died with the assassination.
I think that's what they're most angry about. I think that's what pisses them off the most is the fact that Charlie's been killed and they didn't just pack up the tent and go home. That's what pisses them off the most. And that's why we're seeing this, I don't know, visceral reaction and now attacks on TPUSA, Erica herself, and everybody involved with it. I think that is one of the main drivers of all this. They're like, we killed him or someone killed him. Like, just stop, just go away, or we're just going to continue to attack you. That's what pisses them off.
Absolutely. They thought that they could cut the head off the snake and that would end the movement. And they didn't understand who Charlie picked to be in those positions. I mean, Charlie picked a good wife to be, honest. I mean, not everybody does. We've known people in politics and whatnot, doesn't know. Hey, ask any of Mr. Snow's partners whether they regret those relationships. So, more often than not, you regret it. He did very well there. But with everybody else there, they kept the faith, they kept the standard, they didn't deviate, they continued in his spirit, in his way, in his manner. And that's extraordinary because it didn't happen after Martin Luther King was assassinated with much of the civil rights movement that fell apart. It didn't happen after Robert Kennedy was assassinated. His campaign political movement fell apart. Yeah. So it's extraordinary. And these are young people, right? They're like you and I. They haven't necessarily been around the block a couple of times. These are kids. And they're being attacked on a daily basis, accused of murdering their friend for trying to stand up and keep his mission alive. And yet they stay undefeated. They stay forward directed. Because the old Kierkegaard statement, you live life backwards, or you live life forward, but you understand it backwards. They've managed to just go forward, just go forward, just go forward.
Well, I think they underestimated the redundancy that Charlie built into TPUSA. And, again, going back for a really long time, Charlie understood that his life was at risk from the left. He was getting thousands of death threats constantly. And, that's another thing that they want to omit and try to pretend didn't happen. Like, he was getting death threats all the time from the left, but they want to take a couple statements from Israel and turn that into like, oh, this is definitely a death threat. And then 2 days later, he's dead. I mean, whatever. But the fact is that's okay to present that. I'm fine with that. Let's look into that. But also don't just forget about the thousands of death threats that he's had over the years from the left, because that's what's going on. What I'd like to do real quick, Robert, is we'll start taking some questions, and I think that'll continue the conversation going in a lot of different ways. I want to thank Larry Full for becoming a member. Folks, if you, number one, make sure you subscribe, make sure you like this video. We appreciate it. Share our content. Look, I think that's one of the best things that you can do. If you believe in what Charlie was doing, share our content, get this message out. The people hating on Charlie, man, they have entire networks from the very beginning of this that they just regurgitate all of that hate, all of the different accusations, and we need to present a counter narrative, the truth. That's what it's about, the truth. So sharing the content goes a long way. Keep it up. Candy Crush. Why doesn't TPUSA address this? This was early on, talking about the financials. The potential financial fraud by TPUSA, a little sus. So why haven't they come out and addressed this directly?
Well, to a degree, they did. In other words, they went to the IRS and said, please give us public so we can publicly disclose these returns that they were properly filed, and got that out to the whole world. So they figured the way they're trying to approach this is answer that within reason, but not get caught up in it such they can't do their mission. Because if they actually obsessed over every accusation made on the internet or by Candace Owens or any of these other people, they wouldn't be able to do their show. They wouldn't be able to do their job. They wouldn't be able to keep up the mission. So their focal point is to minimize the distractions. And so I've said that I and other people will speak on their behalf at any occasion as needed. So I think they've made the reasonable step to not basically, like, what some of these people want them to do is open up all of your books, tell us where you live, tell us where Charlie is buried, tell us everything in your life. And that's not going to satisfy the Candace kooks.
No.
Because no amount of evidence satisfies them. That they're emotionally driven, they're not factually driven, they're not empirically driven. So they don't care about the truth. That's bloody obvious by this point. And, I mean, there were some people that were listening to her early on that I think were in good faith curious, and they've realized those people are off the Candace train. They don't want to be anywhere near it anymore. And there's some people that tune in just to watch how crazy it might get, or to watch a live psyop in live time. But the reason why they are not spending obsessive time is if they did. One, why should you disclose all your private records? This was her problem with the Bridget Macron suit. Oh, I demand Bridget Macron disclose her entire life and drop her pants on national TV. That's not how it works. I don't get to say, hey, Candace, I think you're really an alien. Unless you go naked in front of your house, I'm going to believe you're an alien. Why aren't you going naked in front of your house to prove you're not an alien?
Yeah.
That's not how evidence works. That's not how human life works. That's not how civil decency works. And we've lost a lot of that in the middle of this.
I couldn't agree more. Little House Blues asks, can you shed light on the issue with Blexit, 1 million several years, and Candy's huge salary and private jet travel?
So Candace was pushing the idea of, a Brexit, but for black voters, and started it, got, Kanye kind of on board, though Kanye later accused her of stealing stuff from him, by the way. So you see a common pattern here with Candace. Yeah. And my understanding is, and Charlie was willing to support it, others were willing to support it, but one of my favorite filters, I call confession through projection. So if you hear somebody make weird accusations against you, just flip it and assume that rather than you, they're talking about I. And I think what you'll find is where there may have been misappropriation of funds, private inurement beyond benefit, misdirection of funds, is with Candace Owens, is my guess. Because the kind of people that are eager to make those kind of accusations when they don't have an evidentiary foundation and don't fit who was running TPUSA, usually are people that are guilty of it themselves. And that's what I suspect.
Common tactic from the Democrats, that they're always accusing Republicans and conservatives of what they're actually doing. We see that all the time.
Well, look at it. If you go back to Russiagate, doesn't it describe the Biden family? They said there's a family that's corrupt, whose son is involved in the corruption. There's even connections to sexual perversion. There's even connections to Ukraine and Russia. I mean, it was the Biden family corruption. They just wrote out Biden,
the Steele dossier from Hillary Clinton. She's literally colluding with Russians to get information on Trump, trying to say that he's colluding with Russians. Like, it's almost ridiculous. Brad Bowen, 5132, says, Gary, as a metalhead, I want you to know what you're doing is metal as fuck. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. Thank you. You are a good American soldier. Well, thank you, Brad Bowen. We appreciate you and appreciate everybody supporting us. We're going to keep going, folks. So all the candy cultists, all the trolls, you can bring it on. Doesn't bother me a bit. We're still moving forward. Two men I greatly respect. The Lord be with both of you. Do either of you think Candace Owens has other motivations for her disparagements besides clicks, money, and grit in the Kirk murder and the various TPUSA entities? I'll let you stab at that first, Robert.
I mean, she does seem to have this need to betray anyone that ever supported her, because, I mean, at some point it gets a little. How many people do you know that badmouth? Well, it's the old saying: if you're talking to, say, you're out on a date, and the girlfriend badmouths every ex she ever had, problem is probably with the girlfriend. Just FYI. So how is it that Turning Point is evil, Daily Wire's evil, PragerU's evil, Dave Rubin is evil, but they're all, the only thing they have in common is boosting Candace Owens, is giving her a lot of prominence. So I do think there's a little bit of that psychosis at work, with almost this need for, that you could see in her family upbringing and everything that happened with her. There is a proven propensity to exaggerate and make up stories, and she's definitely a drama queen. right? She's like somebody you could imagine in high school whispering about so-and-so, that kind of gossip girl, mean girls kind of persona. She gives off those kind of vibes. I am curious about the British angle. I mean, it's not everybody that's married to the son of a British lord. And if you want to see bad faith military intelligence operations, probably there's been as many by the Brits as anybody. I mean, I suspect they were involved in that attempt by Ukraine to murder Putin yesterday in the middle of peace negotiation talk. Just the Brits brag about this kind of stuff. They all think
they're
they're
no
James
friend
Bond.
of the Trump administration, that's for sure. And they don't like it when Republicans are in office. I mean, whether we're talking about the British or many of our other frenemies and allies, like the fact is, whether we're talking about Germany, whether we're talking about, the UK, you name it, none of these people, everybody in the UN doesn't like Trump. And I would not surprise me at all if there's a huge push of our allies' intelligence operations pushing a lot of this stuff, because it does huge damage to the Trump administration. We're going to suffer in the midterms over this. I hope we can right the ship before 2028. But the fact of the matter is there is a huge incentive for all of these other foreign countries to get behind Candace and push this garbage.
And look no further than the fact that YouTube is the biggest censor on the internet, is busy boosting her on a daily basis at scale.
I agree. Jay Hernandez, 6159 says, how did USAID evade so many laws? I'm pretty well versed in this, but I'd like to hear your take on it too.
Because USAID was just the CIA by disguise. That's why they were the intelligence operation. Are you going to kick out these people that think they were really about helping charity around the world? It's like my criticism of Foreign Aid has always been, look, in principle, I have no problem with helping people in a distressed position around the world, but that ain't what Foreign Aid is. Foreign aid is about buying off people, corrupting governments, regime change operations, spreading pandemics, funding insurrections. That's what USAID is. That's
creating
what financial aid is.
Yeah, it's creating opportunities for our military industrial complex to make a lot of money. All the defense contractors. That's one of the many things it does. I got the black lung down here in West Virginia. All right, attorneys, Gary. You said 100%, only one place a shot comes from, only one drone needed then. They surely could have managed one drone until someone explains the shot, anything possible. No, that's not what I said. What I'm talking about is the roofs themselves. First of all, there's several places a shot could have come from. There's very few places, both me being there and constantly looking at like dozens and dozens of hours spent putting people in my model, right? There's lots of places a shot could have come from, to including the ground, that they could have shot and killed Charlie. There's very few places that a shot could have come from where they didn't see it immediately, see it before the shot, and then that person get away. There's very few places where Tyler Robinson took the shot, or the alleged shot, or the allegedly Tyler Robinson, and then like one, maybe two other spots. Every other place, that person would have been exposed, would have been seen very easily, and the distances of that place are very compact. The other thing that many people are not considering is that there are dozens and dozens of rooms with windows that were facing Charlie Kirk. And this is one of my things, or my challenges to people, or what I want people to think about. You could have somebody could have broken into one of those rooms or gotten one of those rooms. They had a clear shot through an open window and could have killed Charlie Kirk. And yet the onus is allegedly on the security team, because people are expecting Secret Service level security for Charlie Kirk, who's had private security and had a PSD team. All right. A personal security detail, or we call them a close protection detail. It is a close protection. They were working as bodyguards. The only thing they can really handle is about a 30-yard bubble around Charlie. And even that, like any of those people, if you go look back at the footage, we had a rope line that they had like bicycle racks. But just about any person out there, and then you had 13 of the security team total. Some were out in the crowd. Most of them, 6 to 7 of them, were around Charlie. But you had a guy here, and then like a dozen people or more on the rope line, several people deep, and then another security team member. Anybody in there could have pulled out a gun and got a shot off of Charlie. off at Charlie. And then, of course, we had dozens and dozens of rooms that were facing Charlie that somebody could have taken a shot from an open window. So you have the security team that I guess people are proposing, like the Secret Service, that spends millions and millions of dollars per venue, not a yearly budget, millions and millions of dollars per venue, hundreds of people on the ground with many different jobs. They would actually go and secure every single one of those rooms, have somebody posted in those rooms, and would secure that place. And that's what you expect out of Charlie's security detail. We're talking about this one vulnerability, but in reality, there are hundreds of vulnerabilities. That UVU allowed guns on campus. All right. If there's 3,000 people on there and only 5% are carrying a weapon, that's 150 guns in that crowd. So these are all things that people aren't considering. So no, it wouldn't be just one drone. If you're going to actually secure the area, and by the way, if it was just one drone, it's not hard to evade a drone. Like you can tell which way they're looking. And then that drone operator is looking at a screen this big. I think there could have been 5 drones out there and Tyler Robinson still could have got that shot off. But the fact is, UVU didn't allow drones, period. You can argue whatever you want, but the guest, which was Charlie Kirk, isn't going to get there. His people are not going to get into a pissing contest, just like I wasn't going to get into a pissing contest with law enforcement and or the UVU administration when they think that they have the law and their policies on their side. Like they're just like, hey, all right, we can't fly drones. And this was verified not only by me, who tried to fly a drone and was shut down by UVU, but on top of that, by Andrew, who did try to fly a drone early on. Andrew Faraci, who was the hired photographer. We just had him on, did a full interview, and he tried to fly a drone at the beginning. He got there at 9 a.m. and was trying to fly a drone early on, and they said he couldn't. So the idea that Brian Harpole lied about not being able to fly a drone, okay, you're the one lying. All right. That's just a fact. So no drones were flown. We've proven that many times. We've shown the pictures that were on Charlie's Instagram. It was a 360 wide angle picture taken from a Insta360 on a pole from the second floor deck. It looks like drone footage. And I understand why Frank, looking at that, thought it was a drone shot. It wasn't. So moving on. I don't know if you have anything to add to that, Robert.
Yeah, I mean, people ask me about the proof. This is the most overwhelming proof of an assassination that I can remember. I mean, you have video proof of him basically kind of appears to be figuring out the scene, walking it before in one outfit, then coming back in another outfit. Then you have him on videotape going up to the building, running over to the spot where the shot was taken, running off the building. You have, and who is it that identifies him? Not the FBI. His mother, his father, that's who identifies him. He then confesses to his mother, to his father, to the deputy that took him in, to his partner, and to a discussion board. It's a gun that he possessed, that his father gave him, that was his grandfather's gun, found at the scene. His DNA is found on the gun, on the bullets of the gun, and on the roof. I mean, his only chance is what? Jury nullification. And I would add one to that question before. Candace appears to be tight with his defense team because she put out statements about what conversations he had. And it's like, what would be the source for what conversations he had with the defense team as to what the defense team was thinking that day in the courtroom? Unless she is working for the defense. That's at least what it appears to me.
Or at least colluding with them in some way. Because I do think, look, her entire narrative, well, I don't know which one you want to pick, but her entire narratives rely on Tyler Robinson not being the shooter. They rely on that. So if that's proven, then everything she's been saying falls apart. Jacqueline says, why do people think anyone is entitled to all the evidence before it sees a courtroom and jury? Do people not know anything about death penalty cases? I don't get it.
Yeah, to your point, the people think that the FBI is holding stuff back. This entire case at this stage is being run by the Utah County State Prosecutor and local police. The FBI has no role in it at this point. I would like them to be investigating other possible co-conspirators. I don't think they are, unfortunately, and I've been very critical of them related to it. Joe Kent tried to investigate from an intelligence angle different foreign government possible involvement. He was shut down. I was highly critical of that. Alex Jones is the one who outed all that months ago. The Utah law requires a strict control over evidence. So one, it's a death penalty case, but two, it's Utah. And Utah has strict control over what gets disclosed and what doesn't. And generally speaking, they don't allow any evidence to be published that doesn't come out at the preliminary hearing. And I hope they video broadcast that, because I think that will answer a good number of questions. They put on a real show at that preliminary hearing to go beyond what they normally do to show how overwhelming the evidence actually is against him. But in Utah, they're not allowed to disclose the evidence except outside of a court proceeding in a criminal case. So that's why they legally cannot go out and show all the video footage, show all the photo footage, show all the rest, unless it comes out in court itself.
That's interesting. I hadn't heard that. Thank you for becoming a member. And again, folks, if you'd like to support the channel, you can become a member. We'd appreciate that. And we do appreciate your support. Greg Ott says, great interview. Thank you. Truth Matters. Question for Robert. Do you and Viva Frey still support Nick Rekieta after his guilty plea deal?
So that's another case I got into a lot of. So, I mean, I talked about Linwood going crazy before he went crazy. I represented in the court of public opinion predominantly, but also helped with the defense for Kyle Rittenhouse, sweetheart of a kid. But he had a lot of these crazies around him trying to do dumb stuff that was contaminating his case and then stealing his money, by the way. That's the other thing they were doing. But it is what it is. But I got tons of blowback. You know, when Sidney Powell was pushing Dominion, I was on the front lines in Georgia for President Trump. We'd figured out where the election fraud took place. It was mail-in ballots. It was overwhelmingly there. And everybody wanted to talk about Smartmatic and Venezuelan software and Chinese servers and German servers. And I was like, folks, those are red herrings. They just stole it the old-fashioned way. They stuck a bunch of ballots that didn't belong there into the ballot box. Now been confirmed in Georgia, over 300,000 were never even properly counted or were counted improperly by people who didn't even sign to clarify the chain of custody of the ballot, which the ballots were all over the place too, which was a whole other story. But so one of the other people I defended was Nick Rekieta. So Nick Rekieta is a lawyer in Minnesota, small town, started a little YouTube channel, had been very critical of the local judges and prosecutors. All of a sudden his house gets raided over alleged cocaine possession. I was like, hold on a second. We're raiding people's house because, I mean, I'm not a fan of cocaine. I don't recommend it, contrary to what some people put out there. They put out AI versions of me as Breaking Bad, how to get your 9-year-old hooked on cocaine, all these crazy things. So I dealt with all this nonsense. There's these people that hate Nick Rekieta that just track me no matter where I go and so remind me. So I thought there were Fourth Amendment violations. I thought there were key issues. I didn't trust why they were going after him. But mostly I knew how much he loved his kids, that whatever his personal issues with cocaine was, he loved his kids. I thought he was stretching himself really thin. He's one of those guys that's homeschooling 5 kids, also homeschooling other kids, and trying to do a law practice and trying to do a YouTube channel that went 4.5 hours every night. I was like, dude, you're going to be under a lot of stress. So I questioned why the government went after him the way they did. I still stand by that. I questioned the Fourth Amendment violations. I stand by that. And what I mostly said is the allegations that his kid were on drugs were utterly false. I've dealt with child abuse. The people who are the worst for victims of child abuse are the Child Protective Service agencies. They're political, they're ideological, and they got 100 problems. They would lie to me more than anybody. I just grew to despise them for years. So when they were leaking stories that somehow the kid tested positive, I was like, if you know anything about hair tests, you know how completely bogus they are for drug tests. Just ask any trucker. So the other people. So, and in fact, all the allegations concerning his kids turned out totally false. He got his kids fully back. Only happens, and he got it back quickly if all the allegations were false. So he had a personal drug use issue, and he pled guilty to that. And he did no prison time, like I said it was going to happen. But mostly I stood by saying the accusations that he was a bad parent were garbage. that his kids were on drugs was garbage. And it all was garbage. None of those people have apologized to this day for lying about me and others related to that.
Fair enough. Dom C303, I would love to see everyone donate to TPUSA and keep Charlie Kirk's mission continue in the future. I agree. Look, there is no difference other than the fact that Charlie Kirk is gone, regardless of what the image that people are trying to portray. And I just want to say this. For the first 2 months, from September through October, about early to mid-November, I was completely open to, probably early November, I was completely open to the idea that TPUSA may be involved. I was open to everything. I was open to all the different theories and alternative theories and alternative shooters. And I didn't go down to UVU for you. All right. I went down there because I wanted to know that I felt like somebody that I looked up to, admired, and saw was making a real change in the country that I love was murdered in front of us. And I wanted to know the truth. And it's because I didn't trust the government. I went down there and looked at what's going on. I talked to multiple eyewitnesses. I've had, we had Andrea Burkhart to come on to explain the evidence and figure out like what's true out of these charging documents. If it is true, why is it true? Like, I took all the steps that I know to do as a knuckle dragging Green Beret to investigate this with as much integrity and as open-minded as I possibly could. And it got to a point to where the information that I had was clear to me of what the facts were. And the facts were that regardless of what was behind, and I still don't think Tyler Robinson acted alone. I think he potentially could have had material support. I think without a doubt, Lance Twiggs knew what was going on and could have offered material support. Other people could be involved. George Zinn, like there could be a host of people involved that no one's looking into. But the facts were, and the evidence told me that that one shot came from that rooftop, and it was most likely, according to the evidence, Tyler Robinson. And the most compelling piece of this is something that Robert's already covered. The fact that his parents turned him in and have not spoken out against what is actually put into this. Because as a parent, you can't convince me that if suddenly my kid, who I don't think murdered somebody, is now on a death penalty case, and I look in the charging documents and it says the parents turned him in when that wasn't true, and a bunch of other things that the statements that the parents ended up, the statements from the parents ended up in the charging documents, there would be nothing to stop me from getting in front of a camera and saying, you know what, my kid didn't do this. They're trying to frame him. None of this is true. He's a patsy. Like that to me is one of the most compelling elements of this. And then on top of that, you had all of the physical evidence. You add in all the DNA evidence. You add in all the eyewitness testimony. You add in all the security footage showing him traveling back and forth between the university. Like, it's probably like, I don't know of any other crime where we've seen more clear evidence. And for people to say, oh, it's just all made up. Like, you can't make all this stuff up. You just can't. There's just too many people involved, from the federal level to the state and local level, to the parents, to the defense attorneys that said, hey, you know what? We need another 2 months because the evidence is voluminous. And by the way, folks, just like Andrea said, this is the evidence they had days, a couple of days going into this. This is not all the evidence they have. We're going to get proof that this evidence in the charging documents are valid. But on top of that, once the trial, hopefully it's going to be televised, as far as I understand it's going to be, we're going to see a lot more. And it's going to be one of the strongest cases. And, I asked Andrea, she's a criminal defense attorney. She's like, one of the strongest cases I've ever seen. I wouldn't want to be on the defense because there's not much here to impeach. So, I don't know what else to say about it. And then I realized, and I got fed up, folks, because I realized this is the truth, and what we're being told by Candace and other people is a malicious, destructive smear. And I just felt compelled to get out there and say, no, this isn't true, and this is why. And this is nothing but loss for me. I promise you. I don't give a shit what you guys think about TPUSA paying me. No, what I did with Andrew is I did what real journalists do, And I had his number for when he called to ask me to come on the show. So I said, hey, you know what? Do we have evidence of where Erica was? I reached out to a source, a real source that I even said, hey, I'm waiting for Andrew to talk about this, see if he has any information on this, said it live, showed it live. You know, I made a kind of a funny mistake, but you know what mistake I didn't make? I didn't make what should be a career-ending mistake of putting a serial woman abuser on a show and alleging that the U.S. military, Erica Kirk, Brian Harpole, and a congressman are guilty of conspiring to kill Charlie Kirk with zero evidence. Zero evidence. That's a mistake that I didn't make. I mean, if you want to count my mistakes, you better get out some sort of papers because I'll make a bunch more in the future, but it's not going to stop me. I'm going to keep going, and we'll just get better and better and better and better at this. So there's that. All right. Extreme political polarization and dehumanizing rhetoric may create a tense social climate where vulnerable individuals may be influenced toward harmful actions. Hope you and get together for a pod. I will, I recognize that name, but I don't know who that is exactly. I'm sure somebody I know. Anyways, yeah, I agree. I think what we've seen with the political rhetoric that was directed at President Trump and directed at Charlie Kirk over the last 5 to 10 years, that's where we have someone like Tyler Robinson that sits in the courtroom smug, wearing, you know, a tie with trans colors, and he feels like he's a hero. I mean, that is not a normal human being, folks. I'm not a psychologist, but the body language expert Jesus said that is clearly someone that is a sociopath, and I agree with that assessment.
Yeah, one thing I would note, one thing I underestimated at the time, Charlie, to his credit, highlighted it right out of the gate. But I underappreciated how dangerous it was, so many of the young left celebrating Luigi. Because, I'm not a big fan of big insurance companies. I sue them a lot and things like that. But to have a father summarily executed on the streets, I was like, that's a horrific thing. But I even heard from like family and friends, other people that are young lefties, and they were like, oh, he had it coming. And they want to see him acquitted. I was like, oh, that we're crossing some dangerous lines. And that was a sign of one of the lines being crossed. Luigi had similar, very smug in court, very similar demeanor, disposition. Somebody else somehow radicalized rather rapidly online. But it's a disturbing sign when people think assassination is effective political expression.
Yeah. B Huff 4748 said Owens was in love with Charlie and never materialized. She is crazy, but if Gary is going to keep talking about this, he needs to prove the kill shot. Wait on trial. That is my problem. Look, I've said this before. I've done whole podcasts on the complexity of trying to replicate that shot. Number one, first and foremost, we don't know what the ammunition was used. I've already told you that I can go back here and I can load around, and I promise you it'll barely punch through a pumpkin, right? We can replicate the shot. Like there's 1,000 things that could have caused that round to not exit. I think what is most likely in my mind, there's a couple different things. Number one, if you used any sort of varmint round, that is a frangible, that is a variation of a frangible ammunition that most likely wouldn't exit. So it could have been a varmint round, could have been a hand-loaded round. The other thing too is something could have happened to where we did not have full gyroscopic stabilization of that round. So what we have is extreme yaw, which is basically just kind of flopping around, potentially even tumbling. If that's happening, two things, and I lean toward that for a couple of reasons. Number one, we have what appears to be, and it's hard to tell with the shitty footage that we have, it appears to be a larger than expected entrance wound. So if that round didn't hit and it wasn't fully stabilized and it hit with the round at some sort of oblique angle, it's not going to exit. All right. It's going to be tumbling almost upon impact. And then when it hits the spine. The other thing I've come to realize with this from a technical standpoint is we have 3 examples of 30-06 rounds or its equivalent not exiting the body. Number one is Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King was shot from 65 yards away, allegedly. Now, I know there's some controversy of if James Earl Ray actually shot him or not, but it was never an issue whether or not 30-06 was actually used. So I think it's fair to say, and that's based on a lot of research that I've looked at. I'm looking to see if anyone's saying that it wasn't a 30-06. That was never a controversy. So he was shot with 30-06 with the wounds very similar and trajectory very similar to Charlie Kirk. He was actually hit in the mouth. It went through his mandible and then went to his neck and hit his spine. So it hit his spine, and I want you to think about that. And the way that the spine is set up to absorb energy. Then we have Charlie Kirk, where he was hitting the neck, rounds probably tumbling, hit his spine, deflected downward. And then, most importantly, or probably one of the best examples, is we have John Ritter. I feel like I got his name wrong just now. Anyways, Ritter was actually a former Green Beret, and this is actually on video. One of his teammates were videoing, had a helmet cam while this happened. He was shot from 25 yards away with a 7.62 by 54, which is known to be the Russian equivalent of 30-06. It went into his back obliquely right here. It actually hit his spine, deflected downward, and not only did it not exit, he's still alive. He stayed in the fight, as a matter of fact. And it was funny to watch this all play out. I actually didn't know who he was at first. I'd never heard of him. And somebody tagged me in something. The next thing I know, he's actually defending himself. People saying, "Oh, it didn't happen." So he released a video. He's like, "Oh, it was much farther away. It was a different round." No, they actually know exactly what round. And then on top of that, then he released pictures of his injuries. And then he released the medical documents proving this stuff. So he shot 4 times with 7.62 by 54, three in that instance, and was able to keep fighting. The round hit him in the back, hit his spine. So we have 3 instances where a 30-06 or equivalent hit the spine and did not exit. And if we look at the shock absorbing capabilities of the spine, I think that needs to be studied. The problem is that we're dealing with terminal ballistics, and there's not a lot of data out there on terminal ballistics. How many people were actually shot with 30-06 and didn't die? Or how many people were shot with 30-06 and it didn't exit? From the beginning, I've said, I don't know for sure if it was 30-06. But what I do know is there's a certain amount of information that we need to have before we can even say that there is before we can give any sort of prediction of what we think the terminal ballistic outcome would be. And we have none of that. We don't know what type of ammo it was. We don't know what type of projectile it was. This is just a theory. We know that Tyler Robinson, according to the documents, engraved on the rounds. Now, I've always taken that as he engraved on the brass casing itself, which I think is most likely. If he did any sort of engraving on the projectile or damaged the projectile in this process or in any other process, all right, that would cause massive instability. And we would have a extreme yaw and or even tumbling before it hit Charlie. And that immediately, 10 out of 10 times, almost 10 out of 10 times would, especially hitting bone, would most likely result in a round that doesn't exit. That's really freaking hard to replicate. Like the other thing that could have happened there, depending on the rifling in the rifle and other things going on there, depending on the weight of the bullet, a lot of different variables. The fact is we just don't know. And yeah, we can get out there and do a bunch of testing. We could do 1,000 tests and never come close to replicating what happened because we don't know the ammunition used, a lot of things. We don't know what the condition of the ammo is. There's just so many variables. And the other part of that is you need a human body. Like ballistic gel is not an analog for the human body. Do we need to get cadavers? We can talk about shooting bone. Shooting a femur of a cow is not the same as shooting the spine of a human. It's completely different. So all of these variables that we would need to be able to control to even test any of this stuff, it's super complicated. It really is. So anyways, that's where we're at on that. Wolves in Finance is factual. UPS box wasn't TPUSA, but 110 tied to Arizona Senator Jake Hoffman and millions. Why no scrutiny? Candace Owen has every right to speak up. That's you, Robert.
Well, the first part he's wrong on. The Wolves in Finance was not factual. He lied about what was present at the strip mall, and you would use a post office naturally. The individual that worked with Turning Point, that's now a state senator, was working with Turning Point, so there's nothing unusual there either. So they're trying to make a big deal out of nothing. And I'll debate wolves in finance anywhere, any place, anytime. He's not going to welcome that. He's busy clickbaiting his way to trying to get boost. And we're going to see a bunch of these. You'll see who's sincere in their advocacy or who is driven by clickbait, by who decides to ride the Candace train. Because I'm seeing a range of people, even some people, the gun people. Now, there's sincere people. Chris Martinson's always a sincere guy, very independent thinker, all the rest. I'm friends with him, worked with him, don't agree with him on certain aspects here, but he's always coming at it from a sincere angle. But I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about people that out of the blue suddenly become like wolves in finance. When did he become a nonprofit tax expert? Will somebody let me know? Because last I knew, he didn't even take an online class. So when these people suddenly come out with deep insights about the financial system that can be rebutted in like 5 seconds by somebody who knows what a 990 form actually looks like and should be there, that tells you the guy's a fraud. So I've said publicly he's a fraud. Going to keep saying he's a fraud. People who always get a kick, people say such and such is factual. It's like, actually, no. That's your first problem. Is what you got is not actually factual.
Agreed. Sam and Janet, I always try to catch you live, but I never get here on time. I appreciate all you do, and you keep us sane when the feed is full of Erica and Charlie hate. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. There's an investigation starting into campus police in January. 23 officers were employed at UVU. Thanks for the number correction. There was also a few months prior to it, they wanted to actually increase the number of campus police, and that was rejected, even though that, per capita, how many students, the UVU police were extremely low. They should have been doubled in size. There was a report on that. I posted that on X. So they knew they had a security and numbers problem to begin with and never addressed it. Thank you very much, Preacher 52. This was a fantastic live. Thank you. Very encouraging. Dom C 303 gifted 10 Paramount Tactical membership. Thank you very much. That's very kind of you. And Merry Christmas to all of those that received those memberships. Gary, what a greatest show, and loved your guest, full of energy and lots of knowledge. I really enjoyed it. I did too. I was like, oh, we're going to have a lawyer on. It's going to be so boring. No, I would love to see Barnes debate Candace. Thanks for having him on tonight, and thank you for your continued work on this.
She has an open invite by Viva Fry. And those are one of the signs I was telling her that she knows she's kind of full of it. Because anybody knows Viva's gentle. I mean, he can be very effective, but he's not going to be controversial just to be controversial. He'll be very kind and polite and diplomatic. He even tries to constantly strongman the opposite side argument. That's the way he was. She won't even debate a peer him. And I think after the disaster of her Piers Morgan appearance, you're not going to see Candace want to debate anybody, anywhere, any place. But I've said I'm happy to, unlike Candace, who said I'll discuss it with Turning Point anywhere, any place. Well, I didn't mean anywhere or any place. It came out. I mean anywhere, any place. I don't care. It could be on her show. I don't care. I'm happy to discuss and debate any of these topics. But she has called for my disbarment. So after I said that. Bridget, I was like, sorry, Candace, you're just cooked on the Macron suit. She's like, no lawyer should be allowed to say this. I call for Barnes' disbarment. So that's where it currently stands.
Gary, Candace just basically accused you of lying to and manipulating Mitch Snow on her X basis. She's doing right now. Question for bar and peanut butter or on French toast, yes or no?
Well, I'm an Elvis fan, and Elvis liked peanut butter on pretty much anything. He once ate peanut butter and banana sandwiches for 6 months straight.
Peanut butter, bananas, and bacon, right?
Yes. That's actually a surprisingly good combination. It may sound heretical, but it's actually quite good. No surprise, she's going to keep libeling everybody. She needs to be the center of attention, and she needs constant drama at a minimum. Those are the two things that have been in common with Candace from the day she showed up on the public scene. So I don't expect that to go away anytime soon. But notice that she won't meaningfully engage people that are capable of pushing back effectively. I mean, when Piers Morgan makes you look bad, Piers Morgan, you're really at the bottom.
Yeah, I don't know what she of lying to and manipulating. There's nothing I lied to Mitch Snow on. I was on the phone with him for 2.5 hours. What I told him from the beginning was, look, if you're telling me the truth, I'll be your biggest advocate. If this stuff pans out, and then that later on, I found all kinds of court cases where this was the biggest lie to me. In one of his podcasts, he claims that Lene, who we will have on tomorrow, and this is the last podcast I'm going to do about Mitch Snow tomorrow. I am emotionally, physically, just sick of this. Like it is such a deep, dark rabbit hole. I've spent time on the phone with all of his ex-wives, his children, and there's been some good things that have come to that. By the way, one of the things, I was actually called by his son today and said the good thing that's come about this is like all the kids knew about their half siblings, but they've been basically told that like nobody liked each other, and all of them kind of wanted to reach out to their half siblings, but were always afraid to. And what I'm really happy about is the fact that he called me today and was like, "Hey, man!" And by the way, he first asked for one of their numbers, so I contacted that person. I gave them his son's number. Now they're all making contact. Anyways, going back to the thing that I knew was a lie. He said on the podcast that he did with, I don't even remember her name. It was one before Candace, that Lene, actually, he was trying to get away from the house. Lene went out there, took his car keys, took his phone from him. He's a 250-pound dude. And then she lured him back in the house. She had the garage set up as a prison, and then continued to beat him about the hands, broke both his thumbs with a hammer, broke his feet with a hammer, bashed him over the head with a hammer, then locked him in the garage. And then she accidentally, I guess, left the hammer in there. And then he was able to break the door in, get through there. And then he was trying to call the cops. I guess he got his phone back. And then she yanked his arm and then dislocated his arm. All right, come to find out, Lene is like 5'2" and 85 to 90 pounds. None of that's true. I mean, just on his face. And then, by the way, the entire story about Fort Huachuca is bullshit. So there was nothing I did to manipulate him. And I told him if he was telling the truth, that I would be his biggest advocate. I knew he wasn't telling the truth. And that's that. And the only thing I got out of him was his DD-214 and a couple other documents, which I would have gotten from USASOC anyhow. So don't know what to say about that. She can make it whatever lies she wants. Fact is, she should be ashamed of platforming that guy, raising money for that guy. It's disgusting. And I'm ashamed that he was ever a Green Beret, quite frankly. Trump supporter, I follow you and Candace, don't agree with Candace and everything. Mitch hurt her credibility. TPUSA, not involved. Tyler, not a long gunman, but Charlie's book, stop in the name of God. Well, Melissa looks like, anyways, thank you for that comment. I'll just leave it at that. Credit where it's due. Candace Owen did a brilliant job with Becoming Bridget series. I'd be very surprised if Le Premier Dame has got a vertical smile. Looks like you want to respond to that, Robert.
You'll see in trial. Now, just where it's at. Some of us have told Candace and other people don't incorporate in Delaware. We'd said that very publicly. She never took the advice because whatever. So, a Delaware jury pool, Delaware judge pool, and she's already cooked anyway for political reasons. But she told 125 specific statements that were factual, that she said were factual. I mean, like Viva's defense of her is, well, she meant it as an opinion. I'm like, yeah, it doesn't matter. She kept saying it was factual. That will be provably false at trial. And she will get crushed. And I get all these, like, there was people that thought there was a headline that said suit dropped on Candace, and they thought that meant the suit was dropped. They're like, hey, Barnes, show you. I was like, no, they dropped it on her head. That's what they did. She is completely cooked. She has no chance of winning, and I'll stand by that. You can bet against me if you want. Good way to go broke.
Now, have you looked at any of the documents and the actual court case and the allegations and everything with that, Robert?
Oh, yeah. I read the entire complaint, knew the whole backstory. I'd followed it for other reasons, independently of Candace. Yeah, I watched. Like people were like, did you watch Becoming Bridget? I did, and I was shocked at as the statements. I was like, please don't tell me you said that, because I even looked at it first as could I defend her, and I was like, no, nope. It's just give up, fold, capitulate now. Other lawyers that looked at it came to the same conclusion. I mean, she just went nuts with it. She took a kernel of truth. Macron is was promoted by the Rothschild family. He's an elite guy. He's a globalist. He's connected to a lot of pervs. I mean, to be honest with you, that's French leadership in general, if you know the French. But there's a weird thing with his wife that he got attached to her when he was a school teacher. All that. And she takes it into, there's a small little incestuous group of Jews that's actually, she's his father. That was my favorite part. I was like, hold on a second, what? Brigitte Macron is Emmanuel Macron's father? And that his brother doesn't exist and his sister doesn't exist and these family members don't really exist and they're all fake and fraudulent. She got basic stuff, like Brigitte Macron's mother dealt with intersex people. She confused that with transgender issues, which it's like, no, those are two totally different issues. She libeled everybody. She libeled brothers, sisters, she libeled random people. So, I mean, she's completely toast. And imagine she's on the stand and you could ask a question like, could you explain to the jury why you think Joseph Mengele was misunderstood and was really a good doctor? You know what I mean? I mean, statements you're like, what the? So she's completely cooked. I read the entire complaint. I read it multiple times. I even broke it down for the board members. And as someone, I represented the Covington kids. I represented Alex Jones. I represented a lot of people in these different spaces. My representation of Jones is more limited to the constitutional challenge. Texas Supreme Court, other lawyers handle the rest of the case. But that they're going to do what Jones was mostly innocent of what he was accused of. That's why they defaulted him and wouldn't let him defend himself factually or all the rest. It's another example, by the way. Take Sandy Hook. It was high-profile murder of all these young kids. And you have Obama wanting to make it about gun control. So a lot of people rebel against that. And they went to all these crazy lengths that didn't happen. Everybody's a crisis, all these crazy stories that discredited the real investigation, which was what the Sandy Hook school did. Is after Covington, after Colorado, Columbine, all schools, as a matter of safety, were supposed to allow you to lock the inside of your door so that you could prevent what happened in Columbine reoccurring. Well, the politicians in Sandy Hook pocketed the money, gave it to their pals, so that they had no means of locking the inside of the doors. So they hid FOIA documents for 5 years because they didn't want anybody to know that, in fact, the politicians were partially responsible for the deaths of those young kids, and instead focused it everywhere else. And they were helped by people pushing crazy fake narratives. So the politicians got away with a real crime.
And the gun control lobby.
Yeah, exactly. The gun control wanted to make it about guns. So we didn't investigate SSRIs. We didn't investigate what radicalizes these people to begin with. We didn't investigate why wasn't there adequate security at the school. We didn't investigate. I mean, some of these kids were found stacked up because they were hiding in the bathroom because there was no door they could lock. And if they'd been able to lock the door, they would still be alive today. And that story got hidden by the media and the politicians and the people who pushed all the fake conspiracy stuff. So I still get emails from people telling me Sandy Hook didn't happen, by the way. So that attack me, that say I'm working for the CIA and so on and so forth. So I'm used to this rodeo, you might say. But it shows when you get off the proven path of what really happened, you actually help the worst actors.
And the sad thing is, here we are 20-something years later after Columbine, and nothing's really changed. Nothing's really changed in schools at all. That's the sad thing. They still can't lock doors in the bathroom. They still can't barricade themselves in. They still haven't compartmentalized different areas of the school. They still don't have trauma kits. They still don't have people trained with basic traumatic injury response. Like, it's disgusting. That's one of the topics of this nation that just blows me away. Thank you for the super sticker. Gary would love to hear what you would say to Candace. You know she's watching. I really got nothing else to say to her at this point. Somebody asked me the same thing the other day, and I said my piece. I'm just done with her. I think she's, I think she's completely and wholly dishonest. And we're going to continue putting out the truth. She can spread whatever lies she wants about me, try to, I'm just done with her. For Robert, is there a legal way to force Mitch Snow money, $144,000 to date, that goes to his ex-wives and kids?
I would recommend to his family that has collection, in some state governments will probably have a role too. They should levy those funds. They should go to court, immediately seize those funds so those funds don't get distributed to him and go to them where it belongs. It'd be the only good thing Candace has done this whole time is help raise money for his kids.
Yeah. Blaming the security team is like blaming the shortstop for getting hit with a home run at a baseball game. LOL. Yeah, there's a lot of insane expectations on the security team. Not to say there isn't things that could be done better. I'm not saying that, but they just weren't prepared to handle or mitigate a long distance threat. I mean, that's just the reality of it. That's not what a close protection detail does. Thank you, C-17 manned helo pilot. Erica and Brian would have to show ID to get access to Fort Huachuca as well as Base Hotel. There would be records of them being there. Yeah. I mean, there's just there's a million things wrong with this story. And it's even like, there's not even a story. What he claims is he walked in and he saw people walking out. Like, he never once said that he actually, like, the viewer has to infer, or basically has to, like, from the story, you have to conclude or speculate that there was a meeting, a secret meeting, and then you have to further speculate said secret meeting was about the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Like, it's ridiculous upon ridiculous upon ridiculous, and the fact that anybody believes it is just insane to me. The pushback on this is just stupid. What is the significance of what the judge authorized to be released today? Yeah. So some court documents from Tyler Robinson. I haven't looked to see if they've released them yet. Before this podcast, I was looking for those documents, if they were going to be released. They didn't have them released by the time we started.
Yeah, and I hope they consistently are more transparent. By the way, it's the defense who doesn't want transparency. It's the defense that didn't want videotape, didn't want broadcast, doesn't want things published. And I understand that to a degree. But I think the defense knows their only defense is jury nullification. Candace Owens is the best friend of Tyler Robinson right now. So I think that appears to me their only. If I was on the defense team, you might be obligated to pursue that as advocacy for your client, because he's guilty as all get out. And it appears he's not really denying it. He wants to take credit. He wants to brag about it. And the only thing holding him back is the death penalty.
Yeah. Truth matters. Yes, it does. What's taken TPUSA so long to file legal action against Candace?
Because Charlie was the kind of person who never even filed suit against Nick Fuentes. Fuentes went libeling all the time, would interrupt his events, would sabotage it with all kinds of with hecklers all the time. I mean, Charlie really didn't like Nick Fuentes, understandably so. But he never sued him either. Because that's just, Charlie was, okay, let's try to keep as many people that even could be aligned in the same camp. And let's mitigate hostility. Let's mitigate, like, that's why we wanted Elon and Trump to get back together. That's who Charlie was, a very giving, generous personality. And if people remember Reagan said, never speak ill of your fellow Republican. Charlie comes from that old sunny optimism camp of let's keep everybody on our side together as much as possible. And even if somebody's going AWOL, we can, keep them a little bit distant, but let's not create adversarial relationships and with Candace, suing Candace would be kind of a waste of time because the Macrons are going to take her for everything. Now, she'll be wealthy because her husband's wealthy and his assets are not attachable. And I'm sure it's set up an independent British trust, the way that those big old money families run. So she knows she's financially safe. So that's why she can libel anybody, and she knows there's no real risk. All the people giving her super chats. By the way, you're donating to Bridget Macron's future summer home. That's where that's going. So there's that money that's attachable. But otherwise, you can see why I wouldn't even necessarily recommend people rush to sue her, aside from making a point, but you're behind the Macrons, and they're going to get all the money of what is available and attachable. But it's not within Turning Point's demeanor and disposition to get. By the way, Candace knows this. That's why she's doing what she's doing in large part. She knows they are not likely to push back. Now, her mistake is now she wants to go after Alex Jones. That's probably ill-advised because Alex does know where all the bodies are buried and can start going boom, 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 boom. And even told her that. He's like, look, where you're going is wrong. This is AWOL. This is you're causing harm. This is not factually true. And instead, she attacked him instead. So, but that's why Turning Point's nature is not to get into an adversarial relationship if they can avoid it with anybody, particularly in the legal arena on the conservative side. There are people that have I've told him I'd represent him pro bono because I find these outrageous what she's trying to do to destroy Charlie, who is a man I had great personal respect for and friendship with. But their tendency is let's not be hot. They're very much turn the other cheek. They're true Christians. Charlie was a true Christian at the deepest and broadest and most meaningful level.
He followed up with another question regarding wolves and finances. What's your thought on that?
Maybe he's dumb enough he'll libel me, and I'll come right after him. So so we'll see. It's similar. They avoid all the noise as best they can. They've only spoken up when it became so overwhelming they had no other choice. After Candace said cut off all money and all the rest, then they're getting questions from donors, and so but they're unlikely to take legal action against anybody because they're non-adversarial by nature. But some of these people that repeat this, they shouldn't assume that's always going to be the case. They shouldn't assume it's going to be the case about security guys, right? Security people who their professional career and everything else, they could sue with ease. They've already got good suits against her. She's repeated so many. I think she's libeled every single one of the security team at one time or another. Those people could take legal action. They would be inclined to do so because their future profession depends upon them correcting the record. So it wouldn't surprise me if some other people get sued at somewhere along the way by some of the participants. But Turning Point is unlikely to initiate legal action if they can try to turn the other cheek to make the world a better place.
Yeah. Real quick, we got a little intermission video I've been putting together. So, as you guys know, this straw man argument that Candace, Baron Coleman, and many others have put out is that Gary was saying that Mitch was never at Fort Huachuca. I've never said that. Matter of fact, I've always said that I think he is at Fort Huachuca. That is not material to that's not material to what being said in the claims and the accusations. So I just we're going to give you guys a premiere of this video where I set the record straight on this. So we'll just go ahead and play this.
I obviously can't confirm that you saw who you say you saw. If you had to put it at a percentage.
All right, folks, again, this is a very common tactic with disinformation. What they do is they show you proof, or say they even confirm, the non-material elements of the story. All right, I can confirm you were there. Who cares? Who cares if you can confirm this guy was there, or you can confirm that he stayed at a freaking Best Western somewhere near Fort Huachuca? None of that matters. What matters is you confirm what he's saying or anything. I mean, she confirms nothing ever. I mean, that's the problem with all this stuff. So there's that. I don't doubt that he was, matter of fact, I'm quite sure he was down at Fort Huachuca. That doesn't mean anything. So for those of you who don't know, Candace Owens shared this, I don't know, as proof that Mitch Snow was there. And again, I don't doubt that Mitch Snow was there. And then she gives you this trash right here and says, oh, this is proof that the entire thing happened. I don't care if Mitch was at Fort Huachuca. All right. The reason he got detained is because, well, there's a lot of weird stuff going on with him. So anyways, I'm just, I'm blown away at the cognitive dissonance of the Candace crowd. They demand so much proof from all the accused, but they demand zero proof from the accuser. And that is not how this works. That's not how a normal society works. And it's quite insane in my opinion. All right, so that's like a couple of minutes worth of activity between the time they encountered this individual to the time the police were called at 11:17. So this debunks the entire thing. He didn't go in there at 7:37, which is what originally was stated. Just didn't happen because unless you're saying this is a lie, and if this is a lie, then why show it? So either this is accurate or it's not. And if it's not, then this doesn't prove anything on your point. And I don't care if it does. I don't doubt that he was there. All right. He's a weirdo. They said he was acting weird, making threats. The next thing you know, bomb dogs are called. But what was he doing to warrant this reaction? Being a psycho.
And that's what he does. So who cares if he was there? Brian Harpole wasn't there. Eric Kirk wasn't there. And no matter amount of proof, again, we have no proof of any of this. And they don't want to give you any proof of any of this. They don't want to give you any proof of any allegations, but they demand that you prove with evidence your innocence. That's not how the system works. All right, that's crazy. We're in late crazy land. And the fact that that's the standard on which Candace operates constantly it's just retarded. Absolutely retarded. Why was he at Fort Huachuca? Doesn't he live in Washington? Long trip. I know I drive for a living, a little close to the border if the cartel is after you. We've never gotten that. He claims that he went down there to get military records. I doubt that's true. Hey, look, and he's with another woman that I guarantee you is funding his life. Her name's Amy Snow. And I'm sure he fed her a story. And this is speculation. All right. It's just me talking off the top of my head. But, you know, he probably want to go on a road trip and say, hey, you know what? Let's go down Fort Huachuca and get some military records. Like you can mail those things. You can get those electronically. You don't need to go down there to get. Now, his story is that there's these classified records of a drug bust that was public. There's videotapes of it. He wasn't even involved. And we know he wasn't involved because All right. Again, so when we have people like Candace and Baron Coleman with their stupid lie and straw man argument saying that I never said he was there and that this document, and his son coming on the show saying he got a call from military police, which, by the way, I talked to his son 2 other times on the phone. We talked about that multiple times. I wasn't caught by surprise or anything else. It's just ridiculous. But anyways, it just proves a point that they're liars and liars are going to lie. That's really what it comes down to. I didn't even notice this one, but I don't know if you have an opinion on him or don't. You can respond to that or not. I don't really care.
Well, I think you're going to have 2 camps. Some people that are just get caught up in the craziness of it, much like QAnon or the Sandy Hook alternative theories or any of those other people. They just get caught up in it, and it's usually emotion that's driving it. So people look for evidence or they try to respond to them with evidence. Evidence doesn't move them. It's an emotional, psychological appeal that they're part of. It's very much cult mindset. If anybody's ever dealt with somebody who gets caught up in a cult, you can't reason with them. You have to try to get to the underlying psychology if you can, if they're a friend or family member, to unravel that aspect. In fact, Chase Hughes does work trying to detox people, deprogram people from cults. Yeah. So he'd be a great explainer of this as to how this works. Like he was the first one after the response to Charlie Kirk's murder was saying, by the way, this looks like a psyop at multiple levels, everybody. And here's how to figure out what's what and what's not. And, you know, he's great at that. Great guy, by the way. Sweetheart.
So I got to go to his house, meet him in person. I've been following him for a while. I thought he was going to be great. He was 10 times better than I thought he would be in person. What a good dude. Super great guy. I saw you lawyered your way out of that question. Lucas Ray. Thank you, buddy. We really appreciate that. It was a very generous donation. Just want to say I'm proud of all the good people here working together to fight this many channels live stream. Paramount Tactical. Well, good. Baron claimed you take TPUSA orders on what to say. Yeah, I don't. You know, what I did was good old-fashioned journalism as I know it. I know they're not used to that, and I reached out to a source that I had. I can tell you right now, Andrew Colvett has never directed me on anything. The only conversations we had, the first conversations we had was 2 conversations, one 2 days prior. He was asking me if I wanted to come on the show. I said yes. We set the time, and then he called me again the following day, I think the day before I was going on the show. And we finalized the details of that. We talked a little bit about, if anything, he knew I was like, you know, I won't say he was asking for advice, but he was asking me kind of like what I thought about this. There was never one time where he's like directed me or even suggested I do anything. So this whole thing is, again, it's a baseless bullshit argument, accusation. TPUSA doesn't pay me any money or anything else. Before that stream, I was like, hey, I know I'm going to be talking about that. I was actually back there testing and talking to the ladies prior to, and something came up there, and I sent him a text on that. And then wasn't expecting a response. And then midstream, it came. I didn't look at it very carefully. I just saw the picture that I asked for, and I put it up on the screen. You guys saw it. I'm completely transparent. If anything, I'm too transparent because I wasn't worried about like hiding anything. I didn't realize he didn't want me to show that picture. So that is, and by the way, Alex showed the entire text stream. I hadn't talked to him since he was done with TPUSA. I talked to him for the first time since we had talked about the me coming on the show. I hadn't talked to him since that day, which was like 2 days ago or whatever it was. So the whole thing's ridiculous. It's based his claims. That's what Barron does. You know, I don't know what to say about it.
The only thing I would add to that for Holly, when you see weird allegations like that, try the confession through projection filter and see how accurate it is. Because confession through projection would be that somebody's telling Barron what to say. And I find it like I've had legal cases where people made like weird accusations, and I apply that filter, and it leads me to theories I'd never even thought about, evidence I'd never even. It turns out incredibly apt and accurate. So I think that's a little bit of confession through projection by Barron.
And you know, the other claim that Barron and Candace, amongst others, are making too is like suddenly that there's this like interloper, like this suddenly this network where they're directing information and people are talking back and forth and there's coordination against Candace. Like, shut the F up. Like from the beginning of this, it has been Candace Owens, Meg the Crazy Village Lady, Ryan Mata, Ian Carroll, Barron Coleman, and Coach Colin and many others that all they do is retweet each other and they freaking parrot everything that Candace has said. There has been a concerted effort and information op from them, coordinated. All right. There's a whole, like you guys know, there's a whole downstream. There's a big orbit around Candace of all this information. And then what happened was I had already gotten fed up with her. And then this Fort Huachuca thing hit. And it was just a bridge too far for a lot of people, including our good friend Nate over at VFT. He was like, nope, like you're going to bring in the military in this Wazoo story. And then he debunked it. And he was still friendly with Candace. And guess what? Even though he was just saying, hey, this is nonsense, break away from these people, Candace. They're trying to trick you. What do? They go after Nate, unfortunately. And he's on their team. Me and Nate disagree. And, you know, I don't know what his motivations are behind it, but I'm going to trust that he believes what he believes and he was doing the right thing. But if you step out of line, you get crushed. The same thing we're seeing with Evan Kilgore right now. Poor dude is getting slammed left and right. Antifa has nothing on the Candace crowd. The Candace cult is going after these people. They're doxing people. Like it's nuts. The way that they have treated their own allies that disagreed with them on this one thing. Again, this was a bridge too far, and suddenly people were like, nope, well, we're speaking out against this. And I appreciate Evans, and there was a couple other ones. There was another lady, I forgot her name, spoke out about this. They had the courage to do so, and they have some integrity, and that's not going to be tolerated within their camp. Gary, thank you for all you do. 2 questions. How come you wear 2 watches? Do you think a mistrial is possible due to all the Candace rhetoric? Well, the reason I wear two watches is this one's for AM and this one's for PM. So I think everybody should have 2 watches. No, I'm joking. Folks, I get this question all the time. This is a Whoop fitness band. All right. So it's not a watch. It's a fitness band, does your heart rate, monitors your sleep. You know, I pay like $40 a month for this thing to tell me that, you know, I sleep like 2 hours a night and I'm running at like 20% recovery at all times. What were you going to say, Robert?
Oh, I mean, there's Richard Barris, People's Pundit Daily, does extensive polling and surveying, including for trials, including for me at times in various trials, other lawyers in trials. He believes, and I think I agree with him, there's a substantial risk of a jury nullification because all they need for a mistrial is one of the 12. And it won't come from a right-winger who's been distorted by Candace. It will come from a trans supporter who's looking for an excuse to let the murderer off. And will say, oh, well, as Candace has proven, it was an inside job. So that will be her, and there'll be someone who brings that intel and information into the jury room. They'll sabotage the trial. That's the only defense he has going for him. Is for a mistrial to occur. Now, getting an acquittal would be very, very hard. I don't see that as possible given the extraordinary amount of evidence against him. But getting a mistrial because you get constantly one or two people on that jury who lie to get on that jury, who use Candace's intel and information to be able to sabotage the trial is unfortunately probably right now more likely than not.
Yeah, when she's convinced so many people that all the evidence is completely made up and, it's just somebody that's protecting the French, the U.S. military, or I don't know, the beekeepers. I don't know. Gary, I'm not sure why the accuser is playing the victim by saying everyone is against her. She did say she wants a war with everyone. Well, she did. She's getting it even within her own camp. Since I started watching your videos, I've been praying for you and your family every day. Thank you for having the courage to fight to protect Charlie's legacy. Tune out the haters. You are iconic. Well, thank you very much. And look, folks, like I've said this before, but your emails, your comments of encouragement, sometimes very timely, because man, this is not a fun venture. Having your reputation smeared and everything else is not fun. It's not fun, but it's worth it. Thank you for another informative. I appreciate all you do. Thank you very much, Becky. Melissa Cole would love if you can get Andrew and Mike McCoy on the show. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe we might be able to do that. Good work, Gary. Keep speaking the truth. Thank you. Candace just had a 2-hour glaze fest to stroke her ego. The only person she let speak who opposed asked her, let's say this meeting happened. What does it mean? She deflected with a non-answer. Thanks. She doesn't have an answer. Please explain the surprised look on your face and the fake taking notes act when he mentioned they called him that very day. Well, it wasn't a surprised look at I went back and look, Barron and Candace are really good at like, all right, get ready. Here's what you're going to see. You're going to see a surprise look. I was asking him what time that he received that phone call at 12:30. That's not fake taking notes. Like this is the nonsense on like you people say. I was taking down the time, which he said around 12:30. And then I wanted to know what time zone he was in so we could look at what time zone Arizona was in. So he was in Pacific time, which at the same time, Arizona was basically on Pacific time because they don't do daylight savings. Nothing crazy about it. I've talked to him. We already talked about that twice. I knew that he called. And if you want me to get him on here and answer that, like he's pissed off at all these comments. That's one of the reasons he was calling me today was like, man, I was looking at all these comments. They're saying that I proved his story. I'm like, yeah, well, that's what they're saying. That like you are an idiot if you think that him being there proves his story. It's not him being there is not the story. You're a moron. I don't know what else to tell you. Like it's retarded. Just like I said.
Yeah, I once visited the White House. That doesn't mean that if I say I saw Bill Clinton murder Hillary there, that there's any special credibility. Remember of Thomas Paine. Thomas Paine said he had no doubt about divine revelation, but he had some doubt about some of the people who claim to have had a divine revelation. So it's always good to keep that in mind.
Like saying, if we were able to prove there is a God, that every person that claimed that God spoke through them, that's proof that God spoke through them. Like, no, that's not how this works. This is dumb. We'll get some of the lives and questions, and then we'll get out of here if we don't have any more. But we're going to be cutting this short in the next 5-10 minutes. Forgiveness Trump suing is why TP will have difficulty suing. Like, no shit. Erica is trying to do this the right way. That's why she acquiesced to all of Candace's demands. Here we are. TPUSA says, hey, we're going to be talking about this. We're going to debunk all this stuff. Candace is welcome to come. Candace's response, anytime, any place. Well, guess what? They called her back and forth for days trying to figure this stuff out. And then it came down to the only way that this is actually going to happen is if Erica flies to her. And that's what she did. And then what does Candace do? She comes back right after that. Like you could tell she felt like she won because she's so immature and childish that she can't say, hey, you know what? That was really nice of her. We cleared some things up. She also debunked her whole thing. She saw Mikey McCoy's call log. So all the things that she was claiming, almost really the foundation of her accusations was around Mikey's supposed suspicious behavior. Like they proved that that's not what happened with his call logs. And, instead of she's just looking at kindness as weakness, and that's unfortunate because they were trying. They offered her, they offered her peace, and she completely rejected it, and it's sad, really, because it could have stopped there. I jumping into a conversation. Seeing how much money he made off of Canvas makes me want to make up some boneheaded, crazy story to tell Candace. Yeah. I mean, he's a con man. It's true. All right. I've been watching some of these comments. Gary is gone above a lot of people. He went out to the college. He's done research. He's done all kinds of things, and he's not lying about things. Like, point to one thing I've lied about. Honestly, there's nothing I've lied about. All right. And anytime I've even gotten wrong, including the time that I responded to Candace about saying something about an article, and it was one of those articles you click on and then like it stops because I thought it was the end of it. There was a advertisement, and then it carried on. It had more information on there. And then my response to that article was only on that half piece. And guess what I did? I could have done the X thing and just deleted that comment. No, I actually said, hey, you know what? I got this wrong. I apologize to Candace. I was incorrect. I haven't seen her apologize to a single person. All right. I believe in doing this. Like, if you don't have integrity, you don't have nothing, period. So that's how I stand with this. No amount of money is going to change what I say because you can't buy my integrity, period. I don't care what people say. Mr. Schwitt, you'll not be telling the host what he will and will not do. When you come back, you can be respectful and stay gone. All right, that's one of the mods getting after it. Okay, so you talked to Mitch's son several times on the phone about the police calling him. Why did they call him on the 9th? The answer to that would provide some clarity. Because they had him detained. He said it on the show. You should go watch the show. But he said it on the show that he was shockingly Mitch Snow's emergency contact, or that's the number he gave him. And by the way, Cameron, which is the son's name, had no idea that he even changed his name. So he's like, I don't know a Mitch Snow. When they say, hey, we got Mitch Snow here detained, he was your emergency contact. You were his emergency contact. Do you know what's going on with this guy? And he's like, I don't know Mitch Snow. So that's why they called him, because they had him detained. Which, again, he was at Fort Huachuca. The story, him seeing Brian Harpool, him seeing Erica, him seeing Congressman, what's his name? Amade, or whatever his name is. All right, that's already been debunked. He was in the chamber at the time that Mitch Snow said this was occurring. He's in the chamber. You can see him. So that one's already been debunked. We've already debunked Brian Harpool. You guys won't accept it. I got it. Fine. Okay. There's other information that I have that we're not going to share because we're not going to, invade people's privacy. He wasn't there. Erica Kirk wasn't there. So on the 8th, Candace has grifted millions off of bullshit and murder on a murder. I agree. How much did they pay you, Gary? No one's paid me anything. As a matter of fact, I'm losing money every time I get on this thing because I could be doing other things that make a lot more money. And that's just the truth. I'm doing it because I want to, and I think it's important. And we're losing our country, and we're losing our country to a psyop that's stupid. Like the fact that people believe this nonsense and this dumb thing, just like we got to wake America up clearly. Because if Candace can trick you people the way that she is and create this cult-like mentality, our country's doomed. Like, it's sad. And on top of that, Charlie Kirk's legacy, his life work, is being destroyed by this woman and people that are supporting her and propagating her lies. Oh, well, that means it's all true. All right. Let me see if there's one last thing. All right, this is a good one. And then how I was saying was that the military that we have are some of the best military in the country. I don't know who that's to, but I agree. Look, we have the best military in the country. There's zero chance that a bunch of lieutenant colonels, 03s, 04s, or E4s, E5s, or anybody else would sit in a room in Fort Huachuca at Joint Task Force Southern Border and come up with a plan to murder Charlie Kirk. That didn't happen. All right, that didn't happen. Brian Harpole wasn't there. Eric Kirk wasn't there. And those are facts until they're proven wrong. So you got to present evidence, because all the evidence points to the fact that Mitch Snow was lying, including his credibility. We've already disproven through multiple people of their eyewitnesses saying that he was never down at the border and was, or at least he wasn't caught up in the drug cartels. And he wasn't in witness protection. He didn't change his name till 2010, and that was because he married Lene Snow, that he changed his name from Harry Myers to Mitchell Snow. He's a serial wife beater. Again, we're going to do another and the last video on Mitchell Snow, and we're going to have Lene Snow on and give her story, and it is the worst out of all of them. So if you really want to know who Mitchell Snow is, tune in tomorrow at 8 p.m. Eastern time, and we will have Lene Snow, and we're going to put this thing to bed, and hopefully I'll never have to address it again. I'm done with this story. All right. Robert, got any final words for the viewers out there?
I wish I was getting paid. I've been accused of it. When I support Israel, I'm getting paid by the mullahs. When I'm critical of Israel, well, when I'm supporting Israel, it's the mullahs. It's Mossad. When it's opposing Israel, it's the mullahs. When I question the Ukraine war, I'm clearly on Putin's payroll. When I voice skepticism about the Venezuelan attack, that I'm definitely working secretly for El Chapo and the drug cartels. So I hear this. Life would have been much easier. Sure, as it would be for you, just to stick to your business, not get involved in any of this. I was living in Malibu by the beach doing high-end tax law. I could have just kept my mouth shut, didn't do all this pro bono work all across the country, did not get death threats and bomb threats like have happened while doing this representation. So all that is nonsense. Usually the people making that accusation are the ones doing it. Like I think Candace Owens is, like I think Baron Coleman is, like I think a lot of these other people do it. They're doing it for clicks, they're doing it for attention, they're doing it for money. They're doing what they accuse others of doing, is what they themselves are guilty of, confession through projection. But Charlie's message was a simple one, to keep the Christian path. There was no question in life that can't be answered in one way, shape, or form by the Bible. And he adopted the forgiveness aspect of the New Testament and the New Covenant as paramount amongst that. And we represent and reflect his legacy by standing by him and not allowing these lies and libels to spread with ease, and to counter it for those that are sincerely intending and searching for truth. I think there's some people in the Candace group that are. I think there's a bunch that are not, and they just don't want to admit that about themselves. But for those that are, we're here to be able to correct that record. You've done great work on this, debunking all of it. And I want accountability. I'm from East Tennessee. Great. So like Trump, I'm not as kind as Charlie. I'm never forgive, never forget, hold the line. We're the place of Hatfields and McCoys, so I don't mind 4 generations of getting revenge. I want Tyler Robinson to face accountability, because I also want to deter this from happening again. And further investigation and inquiry into the real conspirators here about the Trantifa movement, whether somebody nudged him, whether somebody was involved with him, whether there's complicit parties on the ground. How is it that somebody just happened to ask a trans question right before the assassination, the weird way that guy acted, the pederast, the pedophile who got caught with child porn who pretended to be him so he could get away. I want more investigation to those aspects and further, but not all of that is getting taken away by Candace Owens helping Trantifa get away with it, helping the murderer get away with it. And that means they could get away with it again. That means they could do it again. And I think that's why it matters as much as all the rest. So good work for the community here. Good work that you're doing. And people keep the faith, despite they're always going to launch attacks. I've been through this many times now. Like the Nick Recator question, they still come back. I was waiting for a Groiper to pop up and complain about my criticism of Nick Fuentes. It's one of it's Lynn Wood, Lynn Sanity, all the rest. So used to all that. Don't let it deter you, because that's the goal. Their goal is to barrage you with negativity and criticism and downvoting, and try to get the algorithm to push down any broadcast you do, to try to defame you and smear you, because you're asking the right questions while they're asking the wrong ones.
Yeah, look, I have 4 combat tours. Anything that Candace can throw at me and all of her other sycophants, it does nothing. It's laughable. Doesn't hurt my feelings. Doesn't do anything. We're going to keep moving forward. And that's just how it's going to work. Well, listen, folks, we really appreciate you tuning in tonight. Robert, you don't go anywhere. I'll talk to you after the stream. But we really appreciate you tuning in tonight. Remember, like, subscribe, share our content. If you want to become a member, we do appreciate that. And yeah, look, we appreciate everybody's support. This is important. I don't think there's any issue that's more important than this right now, because we, like, the attack is on the truth. And if they can convince Americans of this BS, our country is lost. So be discerning, logic, evidence, like that's what determines what's true. The government will lie to you, but social media will lie to you as well. And you got to assess every individual situation independently, every source of information independently. And you got to be smart about it. Do some critical thinking. And until next time, stay armed, stay ready. We'll talk to you soon.